Exactly.
More than anything else.
We're going 3, 2, and 1, and we've been live for a while, but now we're officially live. Hey, if you're checking us out, we appreciate you for coming on live with us for Crosswit here. Got a couple of my friends today. We're going to talk about some cool stuff. We got Greg Borse returning, all right, and then of course we got Jason Akers. Told you guys that he was going to be coming on today and helping guest and co-host in here in the future. So we've had a long day, man. We went down to Louisiana and assisted some guys down there doing some good work, and got back around lunch, and I guess you took a nap. And,
yeah, I'm old, man.
Yeah. I'm old. we like what 4 years older than me. You always make me feel young when you say that, dude. But you're like 4 years older than me. I think Greg's. Wait a minute. What are
I'm
they?
the winner.
Are you?
Oh yeah.
What you gonna tell me, or is it bad to ask?
My wife just asked me last night, and I'm pretty sure I'm 53.
You're pretty sure you're 53?
Pretty sure.
You know what is horrible is, like, the other day I was because Connor, my son, had his birthday on this weekend on the 7th, and I wasn't gonna tell anyone this, but I was sitting there and I was, on Facebook when if you put pictures, it tells you when the picture was posted, but it's not actual data. It tells you when the picture was taken. And so the picture was telling me 8 years ago, and I was sitting there going, and I know my son is turning 9. He's not turning 8, is he? And I actually had to call Sasha, and I'm like, what year was Trace and Connor born? And I said, was it 10 or was it, So it was horrible, but anyway.
No, my kids ask me how old I am, and I say I'm not old. I'm 39. I just keep telling them I'm 39.
Yeah. I think my problem is, I always say the age that I am. I'm not even that yet, so I'll say 42 when I'm only 41. So when I turn 42, right. I'm not sure if I'm turning 42 or 43. So I think that's probably what it is. Well, all right, guys. So what we're gonna start doing, and when we start on the show, is we're gonna do some. It's kind of like there's another podcast. I'm not gonna say what it is out there, but they kind of cool thing where they start to show off by asking some questions. And so I went on and I kind of put together some get-to-know questions, and we're going to go through these and kind of back and forth. I'm going to ask them all, and we're just going to see what everyone says and just kind of go from there and get to know each other and some of this stuff. So it's we're going to start from the top. I got some questions. I'm just going to go back and forth. I'm going to start with Greg and just answer it. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on these, but just answer it like the quickest you can, and let's just see what happens. So Greg Borse. If you could be any cartoon character, actually classic cartoon character, I'm talking let's say before the 80s, okay? It's nothing like super modern.
Right.
If you could be any classic cartoon character, who would it be?
Popeye.
Dude, I was going to say Popeye. Because he's tatted up and he's a sailor.
Yeah.
And he's always beating people up.
Yeah.
Is that why?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. When I was a kid, that was the cartoon character I loved the most. I loved the character the most.
Yeah.
I liked his attitude. His never give up attitude, and I just fell in love with it, and I missed it later on when cartoons started to change in the 70s and the 80s, and they started getting really, really stupid. I was like, oh, we need to go back, we need to go back to some of this, some of the more classic stuff.
They were pretty corny back then, though. Some of them.
No, they were, but when you think about the old Warner Brothers and Popeye was United Artists, I think there were some really great writers that were involved in. And some of the subtext they had going on. Obviously, you couldn't do it today.
Yeah.
Political correctness would not allow you to do. Popeye will never be resurrected, I don't think, because there are some things that would be, considered racist in it, and stuff like that just are not acceptable anymore. And I understand that, but the old Warner Brother cartoons too that had. They'd redraw concurrent celebrities. You'd get Humphrey Bogart in these things, and actors and actresses that were very famous. And Mel Blanc did great voice work back then.
Yeah, I think he did Bugs Bunny too, didn't he?
He did, yeah. He did most of the voices for them, and even the old Hanna-Barbera ones, which when I was little, the Yogi Bear and stuff. Yeah. When I look back at them now, I appreciate them a lot more, and I don't know. So
what about
Popeye?
What about Popeye? There's a movie. Was it Robin Williams play him?
Yeah.
Was that? I don't even remember. I remember watching it, but I don't remember anything about it. Was it?
He did a great impersonation of the character and the voice.
Yeah.
And Shelley Duvall is the flesh and blood olive oil if I've ever seen one. I mean, it was kind of amazing. But that movie I'm too young to be a critic of it.
Yeah.
Because I've never gone back to see it again. But I remember it was universally panned. Like people And I think I went back and watched it a while later when I was a little bit older, and I thought, this movie isn't as bad as everybody, said it was when it came out. But, it's kind of like the Flintstones movie.
Cartoon character,
I
man.
never saw any of it. It's got to be old? It can't be new?
I guess it could be new. There's no reason why I'm stupid about it.
I'd think probably one of my favorites, probably Wile E. Coyote.
Yeah. Well, I would say that's old, man.
Yeah.
If I was going to go new, I'd probably, I don't really know much about cartoons. There's a long period of, after I got into law enforcement, a long period of my life, I don't really, I didn't really watch TV.
But now you're back into cartoons because of kids, right?
Well, yeah, kind of.
Paw Patrol.
Paw Patrol. We kind of moved on from that to Boss Baby, but that's a Netflix thing.
Oh, what is it?
Boss Baby.
What is Boss Baby?
It's just this little baby, and he's just like a.
Alec Baldwin voices the baby, I think.
Alec Baldwin voices a baby?
Is that who it is? I don't know.
Wow.
We watch it, and it's this little baby, and he's actually, I don't really know what in the hell he does, but he goes around and like he's fighting this guy that's that guy named Bootsy Calico.
Yeah.
And he's like a cat. And he's trying to kill Boss
It's
Baby
kind of a throwback. You remember that Bruce Willis Baby Talk one?
Look who's talking.
Look at who's talking.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a throwback to that, where Boss Baby. I don't think everybody can hear Boss Baby. I think only the kids can hear him. Right. The adults are completely left out.
But he dresses in the Men in Black suit.
Exactly.
But no, I would say Wile E. Coyote for me if I could be one. I think that probably sums up my, my
why
overall
Wile E. Coyote? Because
he was tenacious, man. I mean, he was tenacious.
He never gave up on that damn Roadrunner.
He was going to get the Roadrunner one of these days.
Didn't matter how many cliffs he ran off of.
That's right.
He didn't quit.
He was a loyal customer to Acme. And
that's
I think I'm a loyal guy.
That's right.
But yeah, I'd say Wile E. Coyote. I liked it. I liked him.
Yeah.
And he had these ingeniously, elaborately stupid ideas.
That's right. Painting the mural over the road.
It usually involved a slingshot.
A slingshot and an anvil.
Yeah, or it's something blowing up.
TNT.
It was kind of the expression of like kids, because when you were that age, like when I was a kid and I would watch this stuff, I would be watching it and there was no disclaimers like it is now.
Yeah.
Now it's like everything you see on TV is like, don't try this at home. Back then they didn't tell you that. Yeah. No one said don't ride a rocket out of your front yard. They just be like whatever. And I remember looking at that stuff going, I wonder if that would work.
The Roadrunner, I never understood why that particular Roadrunner. You know what I mean? It
was only him.
Yeah, it was only him. But he was tenacious and he had a goal and it might kill him, but he was going to get after it.
Maybe that was it too. He was kind of a dying and resurrecting.
Yeah.
But I think there's something missing. I think there's a backstory with the Roadrunner that we don't know about. Like I want to know what because you just said it. I think that specific Roadrunner did something to Wile E. Coyote.
Well, I think it got to where it was personal. And then there may be other Roadrunners, but he wanted that one.
He didn't care about the other Roadrunners.
And I grew up watching that too. And when I was in high school, I ran cross country very badly.
Yeah. From
the time I was in the 6th grade until I was in the 9th grade, and I grew up in Kentucky. And I was one of those crazy 1970s runners when they had Runner's World and you keep a runner's log. Me and my buddy would run like 3 miles in the morning before school, go to school, cross-country practice 3 to 6 miles after school, and then we'd run another 3 at 9 o'clock at night, 6 days a week. And then I moved to Texas, South Texas, not a hill or a tree, nothing. And the first time I went running, I could run from where my dad and I and my sister lived in South Texas to the stop sign and back. I could run 6 miles in a straight line. And the very first time I did it, I didn't even think Roadrunners actually existed. A Roadrunner came out of the field.
That was like a jackalope.
And ran right next to me for a quarter of a mile. They're really pretty birds, but I didn't, when I got home, I said, some weird looking bird just was running right next to me. And I
don't think I've ever seen one.
And the weird thing about Roadrunners is it's true. They don't run across roads. They run along
with the road.
Like they find a line and then they stay with it. So.
All right. Well, I was going to say Popeye, but you kind of took that one from me. So yeah, that's all right. We'll go to the next one.
Well, pick Bugs Bunny then. He's
Bugs Bunny's kind of cool and all, but the thing about Bugs Bunny is like if I was actually more of an Elmer Fudd kind of guy. You know what I mean? Like Elmer Fudd's kind of had the Wile E. Coyote thing. He never give up on Bugs Bunny, no matter what happened. But all right, so next question: if you had, and we'll start with you again, Greg. If you had to get in a street fight, all right, or a bar fight, whatever, and you had to have any current celebrity, okay, somebody is alive right now, any current celebrity you can think of to have your back, who would it be?
That's a tough one.
You can pass to Jason if you want. We'll come back to you.
I don't know. That's a really tough one because I guess I'm thinking in terms of screen.
It could be anybody. It could be singer. It could be actor. I'm gonna tell you who it would be for me. Like I don't know why he probably is The Rock. Have you seen?
Yeah.
There's a movie that just came out called Central Intelligence. I don't know if you guys seen that, but man, there's an awesome bar scene in there where he jacks some dudes up. Anyway, plus he's a wrestler, so he can act, but he can still kind of throw. But that would be who it was for me.
Who would you do, Jason?
Steven Seagal.
You don't look like somebody who would need back up.
Steven Seagal. Any day of the week, I'd take Steven Seagal.
Steven Seagal fan, huh?
Well, Seagal's a good martial artist. I mean, he's a legit martial artist, and the movie stuff's a lot of that's crap, and I think everybody knows that's crap. But he's a legit martial artist, trained in Japan. He's worked with he worked with Anderson Silva when he was in his prime, and when Silva came in and did the front kick on one of those Brazilian guys, knocked him out. I'd have to say Seagal. Celebrities. You're not counting the guys like Couture.
Yeah, I'm not counting you actually.
UFC guys that came out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd probably go with Seagal. I think, he's probably good. Aikido's based in sword work. The footwork is a lot. And I wish Greg was here. He could expand on that a little further. But it's a lot of sword work. So, and those things with the sword will apply directly with a knife. So I'm assuming Steven's going to whip out his knife and carve some people up.
Well, since you guys get those, I think, given my personality, I'd probably pick Tim Oliphant, who was the star of Justified. Played Raylan Givens in Justified.
I didn't see him.
He was a marshal or whatever?
Yeah, he's federal marshal. First series started in Kentucky. I'm a Kentucky boy. And he and I have the same kind of, if we can talk our way out of the bar fight, together.
Yeah.
We might get an ass kicked at the end of it, but it'll be kind of funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, he fits my personality, I think, so.
Most people would just say Chuck Norris and call it a day.
Yeah, but I've never been a Chuck Norris fan. I think Chuck Norris is a lot of hype.
Yeah?
Anybody with that hair, feathered hair, I'm not taking it serious.
Is it because his hair hasn't changed in 50 years?
300 years old. Yeah, I'm good.
Well, he did something right.
Yeah. Well,
as far as fitness is concerned,
Well, he's got the total gym.
Yeah.
That's probably what it was. I'm sure it had nothing to do with, any of the, hormones or anything else that he probably had the money to take.
That's true.
But yeah, Chuck Norris was a good martial artist back in the day. He's a little tired and worn out.
So how do you
still in shape?
How do you think Bruce Lee would fit in today's MMA world? I know that's
dominated.
You think so?
Absolutely, hands down. Bruce Lee was the greatest martial artist that ever lived, and probably ever will be. His understanding of motion and distance is something that causes fighters to get beat all the time. And he understood range, and he understood depth, and what can this person do to me from this distance, and how can I avoid it? And he was just his philosophies were just he was one of the original mixed martial artists, really.
Yeah, because wasn't he really criticized by people who were more purists when he?
Right. Because he was Chinese, so he had the kung fu background, and they wouldn't teach non-Chinese people. They didn't want that integrated out to Americans or anybody else. And he kind of took it. That's why he informed his own martial art, which was Jeet Kune Do, and it's basically an eclectic blend of everything. And because he was willing to take. He trained with wrestlers.
Yeah.
And he trained with boxers, and he said that Bruce Lee said that a man could wrestle and box, Western boxing, Greco-Roman wrestling for a year and beat any martial artist, traditional martial artist in the world.
Right.
And he's correct. Those are the two.
That's
as long as you can do that,
primarily what happened too.
That's what happened. Yeah.
That's funny because my son and I were talking about that today, and he asked me if somebody, could beat somebody in a, and I said I don't follow it enough to be able to say with any kind of expertise. I said, but I do remember when MMA, when the jiu-jitsu guys kind of came into MMA, it changed the sport for a while because people were not prepared for that, and then everybody had to catch up. So I said, there's something about grappling, there's something about that's not.
Well, there's an old saying that you wrestle the boxer and you box the wrestler.
Right.
And when you have somebody that's well versed in both, they're hard to beat. They understand.
Well, you've just hit on one of the. I lecture about this in my class when we're doing world literature. Talking about the Roman Empire and the Greco-Roman wrestler.
Yeah.
When people look back at military history and they look at the kind of ships that Romans used, for instance, in maritime warfare, their ships are very light and they're very, very small compared to what everybody else during that time in the world was developing. But what their key was that they weren't interested in having naval battles. They were interested in having land battles at sea. So they were riding up to the ships, grapple hooking on, pulling the ships together, and then fighting people hand to hand.
Right.
And nobody else fought that way.
Right.
And so the fear that they put in the Carthaginians, the people that they faced,
was that close in fighting?
That's the last thing in the world anybody wants to do. They'd rather throw stuff at you, and then we're going to be done.
Yeah. They want to fight from a distance. They don't want someone closed in on
them.
them.
And the Romans, they crafted all these extraordinarily cruel objects with sharp things to poke into people's bodies. And I joke, like, people would just run away from them, and the lieutenants would be saying, "Get back up there." And they're like, "You get up there. They're poking things in me. Forget it." But they changed ancient warfare from the old Greek style, the phalanx and the spear, to that hand-to-hand, and it transformed everything. So I think your point about Greco-Roman wrestling is absolutely well taken.
Good stuff.
Well, and you see that, and I was going to talk about that a little bit when we start talking about kind of the McGregor fight this weekend, and talk about kind of what was expected and what I think happened on some of that. But let me ask you this: so if you could fight instead of fight with one, if you could just beat any celebrity's ass, if you could fight any celebrity right now, who would it be? Mine changes daily. It depends. I mean, like, honestly, mine changes by my YouTube clicks. Right now, I'm on a Jim Carrey kick. I just want to kick that dude's head in. I watched him on Bill Maher, and I just, he's just ridiculous, that guy. Someone who has acted so stupid through the years. Ace Ventura.
What was the question again?
If you could fight any celebrity.
If you could fight
beat
against
celebrity's
anyone.
ass, that's really what the question is.
Okay.
If you could kick the crap out of any of them, who would it be? And you can, and if you name the View, everyone on their count, so that's good. I mean,
I don't know who. I'm just not that violent anymore. You know what I mean?
Just calm down.
Yeah, I've got so much stuff to do. I think, who would I beat up today? I don't know. I'm like, I need to help my wife with laundry more.
I feel the same. I've gotten to an age now where I'm more bemused by the stuff that maybe when I was younger used to really enrage me. If you had asked me this when I was 25 years old, or 22, when I was in college, I would have said Tom Cruise, and I would have said Tom Cruise for the next 20 years.
Well, that's a good one then. Why?
One, because I looked amazingly like him when I was younger.
Yeah.
That to the point where people called me risky business in college, which I hated.
Yeah.
I hated it.
Well, that's not his fault.
No, I mean, it's not his fault. It's not my fault. But then I would go see his films, and anytime he was asked to act, he would do this. Like, he can't act. He's an action hero. Thumbs up on that. He does a great job when he doesn't have to do anything but be that presence on the thing and not speak and not. But when he was supposed to be acting in these things that were serious, I thought it was cringeworthy stuff, and it just, it just.
Well, he got a while back,
and then when he jumped the couch at Oprah's.
Was that when he was the
whole Scientology thing, and he was just kind of nutty. He was just,
Yeah, but that's just Hollywood.
Exactly.
I think that's a lot of it. That's just that mentality and that thing that they got to put out there.
I got to give him a little credit. I remember everyone and because I don't follow him, but I was watching some stuff. I remember when he had the interview with Matt Lauer, and the psychology thing come up, and I remember that as being like him being stupid or whatever. But when I went back and watched it, and I'm not going to say I agree with him on everything, but I did agree with him on a couple of things. I think he's probably carried away. I think the Scientology stuff's probably a big factor in it, but some of the things he said about the prescription drugs and things like that. I had that experience, when I came back from Iraq and stuff, and the VA, it seemed like all they wanted to do was put you on prescription drugs, and it was just, when it turned out I really just needed to go running and go to the gym. So his I think his belligerence toward this, the psychological field and psychiatry and stuff like that, I don't think he's necessarily right, but I think
No,
he's got
actually, I think you have a point, because if you take a look at the way culture has changed as far as psychology and the way we treat people's psychology. So after Freud came into the cultural lexicon as, everything in film, everything in the culture, the talking cure. If you're having problems, you go lay on the couch and you talk it out. And that's Billy Crystal and De Niro's generation. And then we get into the age of pharmacology.
Yeah, that's what I'm
where
talking
the
about.
next thing is ADHD. Everybody gets a pill. And they jump on a bandwagon. It's a medical bandwagon. It's a little paradigmatic bubble where it's like, oh, it must be a pill. We have a pill. Now we've gotten into Instagram and plastic surgery as the new cure for whatever ails you in our pop culture.
It's filters.
Yeah, it's filters. And so it's not so much, recreational drugs, sure, but it's not so much the pharmacology has gone the way of now people are just doing it for fun.
I mean, the way it is with prescription drugs too, that's just a filter as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're just masking to you that.
So I think it does go in cycles. And, I was telling my students this story about my great uncle, I think, was a guy named, it's not Winterberger. Now I'm forgetting his name, because my great aunt and uncle, on my mom's side, changed their name from Goldberger because they said it sounded too Jewish during World War II, and it was hard to get reservations down in Florida at the restaurants they wanted to go to.
Right.
And then years later, somebody asked me if I was Jewish. I was bartending, and I said no. And I said, wait a minute, why do you ask? They're like, your nose. And I said, maybe so. So I called my dad the next day. I said, they didn't change their name because it was Jewish sounding. They changed it because it was Jewish. He's like, you're right. Yeah. And so, but it turns out I'm related to a Dr. Goldberger, who helped develop the treatment or cure for malaria during the digging of the Panama Canal. He's got vitamin G is named after him.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about that last time. Yeah. I remember about that.
And his thing was there was a disease that was ravaging the United States. I'll give you the short version, and everybody thought it was germs. Quarantine these people, don't touch them. And he went around the country having filth parties, eating scabs off these people and drinking their pus to prove that it wasn't germs, because he thought it was a vitamin deficiency. And he turned out to be right.
Sounds like a bar dare, but
yeah. So as a result, niacin is now regularly added to rice and to white bread, and that disease does not. It hardly exists anymore because he ended up being right. So what Cruz was talking about was this, we jump on that, during the Civil War we discover germs, everything must be germs. And then when we get into the genetic age, everything must be genes, right? And then we find out some cancers are not genes, they're viruses, So I always caution my students not to believe everything about the paradigm they're in. Always, try to step outside it a little bit. So credit to him where
it is. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I mean, Scientology is like weird as crap to me, but yeah. I mean, when I saw that, I was like, yeah, he's onto something, because I definitely, the medications. I went down that route. I tried that stuff, and it actually. We talked about this before. I mean, it made me feel crazier than ever, and after going down that, it kind of makes me want. Was that?
That's saying
yeah, I mean, because that's a pretty high bar, but and it made me look at some of these these things that are going on, some of these active shooter stuff or whatever, and I just kind of want to go, what kind of scripts were they on at the time? I don't know if they were or not, but I'm not making assumptions. I'm just saying maybe they were. So what's the dumbest way you've ever been injured? It's the stupidest way you've been hurt.
Man,
I've got one for this one. I know it may take a minute to think about it, but
I got to think about that. I've been hurt in so many stupid ways. No, I've got one where I almost got hurt, which was so stupid. Can I tell that one? Okay, so when I spent one summer in Vermont working for a furniture factory, and I was the only guy on the third floor of a warehouse that did all of the sanding and the oiling and the staining of the furniture. And I was the lone guy up there, and I did it all summer long. And one afternoon on a Friday, late, the owner comes up to the third floor and she says, look, it's about to rain. The guys have been tarring the roof up there. They're gone. Do you mind going up there and pulling the tarps so that we don't get any leakage, because they're not done? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You get water on pine furniture and it's gonna ruin it. And so I'm like, sure, and I jump out there. It starts pouring raining while I'm out there. The sun is, the sky is that green sky that comes before a tornado. It's really, really warm. The drops are like this big. And I'm a guy, right? Yeah. So I'm getting soaked, but I'm pulling tarps and I'm putting tar buckets on the corners of them as I go. What do you do? What's the last thing you do when you put that last tar bucket on the last corner?
You got me.
You stand up and you go like this. I did that. You know what I mean? Like you have this man moment where it's like, I just finished mowing the lawn. I did that, you know? And so I did that, and then I stopped, and I turned around really, really slowly, and I'm about 60 feet in the air, and both of the heels of my shoes are off the edge of the roof. And I look down, and I take a real ginger step forward, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then
you almost walked off the roof.
I almost walked right off the roof, and I thought about what I would have looked like if I'd done that, because it wouldn't have been like a nice Hollywood fall. I just would have been like, it would have been, and I would have fallen into the gas meter, which was in an alcove of the building, tall grass down there, and there was a cutout, right? This building ended here, this building, it's connected there, and there's a little alley that goes out that way. And I just started laughing. I'm like, I would have been dead. I would have been all mangled up inside the gas meter. They would have showed up on Monday. I wouldn't have been at work. They were like, where's that guy Greg from Texas? He's supposed to be upstairs. They wouldn't have found me for like 4 weeks. You know, they would have found this mangled up, decomposing corpse in the middle of
if you had to go.
That might be,
that might be the way to go.
So, luckily I didn't fall off, but that would have been the worst way.
Well, we had how, you know, were you injured? But since you want to go to almost, and I'm going to change my story to an almost. All right, so I was 21. I just got into the Fleet Marine Force, so I was very new in the platoon. And any of the guys that are watching this from 3-2 that came in at the same time are probably going to remember this. So we went to a range, and the range was a static range, you know, meaning we're gonna be shooting online, but it was kind of a tactical range too. It was like an introduction level to where everyone's gonna move onto the range and they're gonna employ all of our small arms, but it's gonna be from a berm, okay, and it's gonna be downrange. So downrange, you have it's not a flat, you know, like golf course type of thing. It is shrubbery. There's dead space. There's everything out there. Okay, so it's just kind of a whatever out there, and no big trees, but a lot of brush and things like that. Well, before the range has started, my XO grabs me, and I'm a Lance Corporal at this time, and he says, "Hey Pippin, I want you to go down there and set the targets up." I said, "Roger that." So what do I need to do? You're gonna take these targets down there, you're gonna put them up, and then you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna take balloons. And the guys we're going to put balloons on the heads of the targets. So when these guys start employing these guns, we can see that they're actually hitting their targets from a distance. You know, because back then we had no technology.
Right.
So I said, oh, okay. So I go down range. I've got a bag of balloons. I've got a staple gun. I've got targets. All right.
Do you have to blow them up?
Well, yeah. So I'm like, this is hazing central right now. Okay. You know, I mean, I'm downrange blowing balloons up. You know, they're yelling at me, blow faster. You know, I mean, you can't win. So I'm sitting there, I get these balloons, and finally they started, you know, they were blowing up down and bringing them. But stapling these balloons to these plastic old Russian style silhouette things. And, you know, get them up there and then come back down range, and I check in. I say I'm back from the range. They say, roger that. And they get on the radio and they call the range hot. And, you know, you had 3 platoons basically there. I don't remember weapons platoons there, but I know 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. So you had at least 3 platoons there. And I think we were going last, and I was in 2nd platoon at the time. So it was like the order was going to be like 1st, 3rd, and 2nd, which is why I was putting targets up, because we were the last squad of the last platoon that was going to go. So they would call range hot. So the first squad, it was a squad range. So the first squad from 1st platoon would move up tactically online, and then they would start shooting. Basically, as they were coming onto the range from the tree line, you know, the first Marine would hit the berm and he would lay down suppressive fire, and the next one would come, and then you had the, you know, the saws, and they would start talking guns, you know, that type of stuff. And you know, once they expended all the ammo, shot all the targets, they'd come off the range, they'd go the other way, and they would send Lance Corporal Pippin down range, put them balloons back up, right? No big deal. And this went on, same order, over and over again. Days kind of going out. This takes longer than it sounds.
Yeah.
Days going, you know, kind of stringing out. I went down range. I had my balloons. I can't remember. I guess they were blown up. But anyway, I went down range, the staple gun, walked up to a target, chink chink, you know, put a balloon there, put a balloon on the heart, chink chink. Went to the next target, chink chink, pow. You know, pow. What the flip? You know, the crack, the distinguishing crack. I turn around. I mean, I was like, I didn't know if it was really happening. My mind wasn't registering what was going on. I turn around and like I'm down here and I see on this side I see, the muzzle, pow, pow, the crack. And I'm sitting there and I watch Marine after Marine after Marine come up on the burn, and I don't do shit. I'm just looking at them. And then I remember when that 249, that saw opened up, then it got real. Then I realized, wait a minute, this ain't good, because they don't know I'm here. They do not know I'm downrange. And it tat, 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 tat. So then I got balloons in my hand. And I'm doing this number. Y'all seen the movie The Rock? Like I'm waving them off, I'm doing this number. And then I remember looking at the balloons going, that might not be a good idea either,
Since they're shooting
so
at the balloons.
I'm screaming at this point because I'm afraid to do anything. I'm afraid to run toward them. I'm afraid to run this way. I'm afraid to run that way. I'm afraid to run back. I'm completely froze, And I was, I was like 20 years old, 21 years old. This is my first time under fire, so I don't know what to do. And I'm screaming. And I remember, and I don't know who he was, but if you are watching this and you remember this, I hate you. But I remember looking down range. I was just close enough to where if I couldn't, then I imagined I did. I saw the look in the dude's eyes. He saw me. But we were so afraid of the senior Marines in his platoons. Like, he didn't want to be the one to call ceasefire on the range. You know what I mean? He was like, I'd rather this dude just die than me call ceasefire, And I'm sitting there looking at him like, are you, and finally, and I'm screaming, ceasefire, ceasefire. And finally, Sergeant Johnson, I never will forget Sergeant Johnson. Sergeant Johnson was like 5'3". His whole family back to the Neanderthals were Marines. Like he had never worn anything in his life but a Marine uniform, I think, from the time he was like a kid. He comes out there and he's kicking people, going all drill instructor on everybody, ceasefire, ceasefire. He screams at me. At this time I'm running down the range, running back up range to him, and then he lights into me like, what were you doing? Yada, 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 and just screaming at me like it was my fault. And Lieutenant Liston was his name. Anyway, he was like, I got this, so anyway, he pulled me aside, and he was the platoon commander and it was XO. They pulled me aside and they were like, hey, listen, we're just gonna keep this between us. One day we're gonna be colonels unless you tell the story. one day we're gonna be colonels, you feel me? And when we are, you're gonna need a favor if you stay in the Marine Corps, and we're just, one day. And I did cash that favor in, I did it later on. I was trying to go to recon battalion. I was trying to get signed my waiver, and I needed some authority, and I went and cashed that one in. But
cool.
Yeah, so I almost got killed on the range. I was going to tell you a story about how I broke my collarbone, but I think that was a little more interesting. So
that's a good one.
Yeah, I know you've been like had every bone in your body probably broken sometime.
No,
I mean, go to the
I think the thing that a chainsaw. There was my dad. He went to. He loved cutting wood. I don't really know why. I mean, he was an electrician by trade. Brilliant guy, but he loved cutting his own wood. So he would order pulpwood, and back at the mills here, you used to take pulpwood, like 6 or 8 foot lengths. Remember that?
Yeah.
6 or 8 foot lengths. And we would have this guy, this truck driver come. He would dump it out in the yard. And Dad, I never really got to run the saw. He always wanted to run the saw. I was a grown man then, and I'd been a cop, man. I was working dope. I mean, I had some life experience, I thought, but I still never got trusted with the chainsaw. And but then when Dad got sick, he had cancer, and he was, and he wasn't, as active as he was. And he was out eating Parks peanuts one day, and he said, "You gonna cut that pulpwood up for me?" And I said, "Yeah." "You gonna let me cut it up?" "Yeah, you can cut it up." So, man, it was just a pile of the way the guy dumped it out, it was all crazy, just no order to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He just like dumped it off the truck. And anyway, so I'm over there, man, and I'm cutting stuff. I'm feeling like I finally reached some kind of mecca, and I remember there was a limb on one of the pieces of wood that they didn't trim off. And when I was sawing through it, it popped around, and when it popped around, it freed another limb. And that other limb came around and hit the top of the bar of the chainsaw. And the chainsaw was running. And it comes around and just, as the pressure releases, it just flies around. It hits the top of the bar. And I'm holding, I'm left-handed, so I'm like this. So it comes around, it hits the top of the bar of the chainsaw, and the chainsaw goes into my leg. And it cuts my blue jeans. And Sears used to make these things called winter skins. They were like thermal underwear.
Yeah.
And it goes through and it rips the blue jean, the winter skin, and pulls the hair. I had a line of hair gone, and did not didn't break the flesh. I mean, it was right. I mean, you're talking about femoral
artery. That's like
And my dad was. I remember it shocked me.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember going, God, you know, looking like what in the world, you know, and I couldn't believe it, and I thought I was gonna die. I looked for blood, and I was waiting on to see it, you know, but did you break the chair?
I just broke the chair.
Yeah. But that'll be interesting to sit on. But yeah, that was you know, and it was just stupid. And I never really had a lot, you know, I didn't know anything about guys that worked in the woods, didn't really understand what they went through.
Yeah.
You know, and it was hot, running a chainsaw, gotta be miserable in the summer. But, you know, I gained a lot of respect for those things that day, you know.
Those things are dangerous.
Yeah. If you see somebody sawed up, I mean, if you ever seen somebody sawed up, that's pretty, that's pretty violent, you know. And to almost saw yourself up, you just go, pfft.
I think chainsaws, like besides Texas Chainsaw Massacre, they're like snakes. There's like an inherent fear of chainsaws.
There's just something about them, yeah.
American Psycho. Thanks, dude. Those chairs are like you can't go sideways. I don't know. Like I was watching American Psycho the other day for the first time with Christian Bale.
Yeah.
I'd never seen it before. I still don't understand what happened in that movie. I don't know if that was all that was real or what. I guess
I really think that with that film, they weren't able to capture what was really going on in the book. You know what I mean? So
I've never even read the book.
Yeah, I think the book is better, but I haven't read the book. I've just read interviews with Easton, the guy that wrote it.
Yeah.
And it was a watershed moment in literary criticism. That movie made a splash.
Really?
Yes, because it was seen to be this meta critique of the Reagan '80s and the whole turn toward materialism and toward superficiality, and not that we've gotten out of that at this point. But I remember reading about it at the time that they were looking at it as that kind of thing, and I think Easton really was doing that. But back to the chainsaw.
Well, I was actually I was only brought the chainsaw up because like I think the freakiest scene in the movie is when he comes out there naked and covered in blood. And he's got the chainsaw chasing the girl down the thing, and I'm like, of all the weapons, dude, you know, there's something about like where did it even come from? You know, where did he get the chainsaw from? He was just out of nowhere. He was gonna shoot that one girl with the nail gun.
Yeah.
I don't think this is in the book, but
I don't know. Like I said, I didn't read the book at the time, and I haven't picked it up. But
you know, he takes this girl. She actually works for him. She's like his secretary, and he has her over to his apartment, and like he's talking to her, and he walks up behind her. He's got like a nail gun to the back of her head, and she has no idea. So she's just like, you know, just randomly talking on, and then something happens. Like he gets a phone call or something, and he just puts it down. Like he sets it down. It's like she's on the couch. He puts it down right beside the couch.
Yeah.
He walks over and sits down, and she talks to him, and then she leaves. And you know, so he's got all these power tools. I don't know where they're coming from, but yeah, the chainsaw. I had one in my truck. I don't even know where it came from. My work truck, and I've never used that damn thing. Like,
they're dangerous, man.
They're
dangerous.
Crazy.
I mean, you know, and you see guys that have them, and they could cut a tree, especially where we live. You know, there's a lot of people that are really super skilled with these things.
Yeah.
You know? Your boss is super skilled with the chainsaw. I think he trims, like makes figurines and stuff out of wood. But you know that you got people that, you know, they'll lay like, you know, a pencil, and they can, you know, cut a tree and have it drive the pencil in the ground. And it's from years of doing it, understanding how the tree bends, how it breaks, and how to pull it. You know, hook it here, add tension there. So, but yeah, chainsaws cool. I mean, I think they're universally scary. You know, it's just in your head, dangerous.
I break them every time I use them because I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I always pinch them off, and then, you know.
My wife a while back, we were cutting some limbs, and she's like, I want to run the chainsaw.
Not gonna happen,
really.
girl.
And,
not gonna do it.
I love my wife to death, but I think she could get cut in a room full of marshmallows, you know. And
I wasn't.
and I was just so afraid. I was like, okay, she's gonna, because she's very strong-willed, and I love that about her. But I'm like, can we just not be strong-willed with the chainsaw?
Yeah.
You know, can we be strong-willed with something that won't cause stitches? You know.
I wouldn't let Sash use a chainsaw either, and it's not because I don't think she could do it. It's because I don't want her to know how to do it. Because one day she's going to kill me, and I don't want that to be what does it. You know.
Well, my wife goes through these jags where she just wants to go out and cut everything. You know, like cut everything in the yard, and it's gone. And that happens every couple of years. And if she had a chainsaw, then we would have nothing left.
There wouldn't be enough left to grow back.
Yeah.
You know.
Jason, if you had to choose a different career, totally different field, nothing in law enforcement or I don't know what would be law enforcement related. I don't know how far on the spectrum or like thing you don't have. If you had to choose a completely different career, start over, not now, back when you started. All right, go back in time.
Like when I was 20,
yeah. You could go back in time, but you had to choose a different career. What would it be and why?
I would be a kindergarten teacher.
Really?
Yeah. I'd be a kindergarten teacher. That's probably what I do.
And
man, little kids when they're about kindergarten age are probably the most innocent, perfect little souls that you will ever find.
Have you ever substituted or anything for kids that age?
No, I don't think they'll let me around them.
I'll give you some insight. The kindergartners are adorable. I was a principal of a school for a while. So
while you were a bartender.
While I was a bartender and a PhD candidate.
So awesome.
But yeah, the pre-K kids are adorable. I mean, adorable.
Yeah.
And then the kindergartners, they become wild Indians, but they don't stop being innocent.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, that's right.
And then the first graders are just, the boys especially, are just they're out of control. And then by the time you get to the second grade, they're starting to calm down, but the girls are starting to, so there's certain grades that are, second grade is heaven, pre-K and kindergarten's pretty good, fifth grade's great, and then sixth, seventh, eighth, you don't want to have anything to do with.
Yeah, I wouldn't want anything to do. But the kindergarten kids at that age, they're so malleable, and they're so impressionable, and they're so innocent, and my stepdaughter teaches kindergarten, and I love it when she comes home and she tells stories about different things about the kids, and she's comical when the way she tells the story anyway. But they're just my concern would be getting too attached to them.
Yeah.
It seems like you could do that. I mean, I know that Matt's wife and a lady she worked with. I was talking to both of them one time. They're talking about the kids that they took care of at a facility that they worked at, and how they'd get attached to them, and you could just see that, you know what I mean? But man, little kids at that age, they're innocent. They're so pure. They still color. Society hadn't screwed them up yet, and they're still coloring how they want to color. They got this beautiful picture, color within the lines, and they're like, nah, I'm doing what I want to do today. So I think it'd be cool to hang out with them. I know, my kids at that age they were the most fun.
Yeah, probably.
Around that time.
Connor's personality's changed, and I noticed this, not in a bad way, but Connor's personality. Trace not so much. Trace seems like he's still the same that he was in, but Connor's changed a lot in his personality since kindergarten to 8 years old. But yeah, you're right. I think that looking back on it, man, that preschool and kindergarten age.
Oh, they're awesome, man. They're just honest.
One of my college roommates substituted in a kindergarten class one time. And they were wild, and they were excited. He's a substitute, and it's a man. Usually they're used to having so they're just like, and they keep talking, and he keeps telling them to be quiet. And then he's like, finally, he's like, all right, I don't want one more person to say one more thing unless it is in the form of a question, and you raise your hand first. And this little boy, his hand goes immediately up. He's like, all right, what's your question? He's like, no, he says, she loves you. And he said, I told you it had to be in the form of a question. Do you love her? and he said he had to step out in the hall to compose himself before he could go into class.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
So what, totally different career. Nothing in academia.
Oh, no?
No, it can't be related. Like totally different.
Totally different.
Can't teach. Unless it's like Indiana Jones, I guess you could be an archaeologist if it's not something like that. But
well, if it had been in academia, I would have said physics. I would have studied physics.
Nah, completely different.
But completely different? I don't know. There's a part of me that would love to have gone into stayed in the restaurant business and run a bar and run a restaurant. I could do that. I was in the service industry for so long.
Yeah.
And so there's a fantasy part of me. I used to drive a 1978 chain-driven Honda DOHC with short bars on it, and it didn't have any insignias on it. It was all black. So this is back in the 1980s. Yeah, late 1980s. So people thought it was like an Indian. They didn't know what it was, and so I have this fantasy of myself with sleeves, working on bikes, running a bar. That would be really, really cool.
Well, I had a bad experience with trying to run a bar, so I'd definitely stay away from it. Most people know this, but when the river here was originally before the last owner bought it, Me and a friend of mine were trying to buy it, and anyway, we didn't buy
Didn't
it.
quite work out.
Well, we didn't get the bar, but what I did do is spend an awful lot of time drinking there.
Yeah.
And like most of my time drinking there.
Well, I bartended all the way through grad school, basically, and I also did almost every job you can do in a restaurant. Expedited in the kitchen, everything.
Yeah.
And of course, that taught me that I didn't want to have anything to do with the restaurant business.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? Because it's a whole world unto itself. It's this kind of weird underworld that people get sucked into, and they never get out. So in fact, I got my motorcycle as a defense against that world.
Yeah.
Because it's too easy after your shift is over. Say, hey, we're all going down this place. We're going to drink some beers. You want to come with us? I'd say, sure, I'll come down there and have a beer. I'm in Dallas. I'm not driving the bike when I've had, more than a beer.
Right.
And of course, I only had one helmet, so I couldn't give anybody a ride, and I couldn't loan it out. So it was like my defense against.
Exactly.
I'm saying,
You're out.
and I'd work the next day, and you'd have these yahoos, rolling in. You could tell they slept in their cars. They're in the same uniform.
Yep, that was
all
me.
wrinkly. They spent all their cash last night. They're trying to pick up shifts at the end of the month to cover their bills, and I just stayed arm's length.
Yeah, that was me.
Right.
Well, I think if I had if I could, this is not like something if I had to do. If I could do it, I'm nowhere near smart enough. And it sounds cliche-ish, but like seriously, and this kind of goes into the last question too. But it would have been an astronaut, but not like the astronauts recently. And I know I don't get this option, but like the Apollo astronauts.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if I've ever told you this, but when we went to so my battalion went to Katrina. All right, during the flood.
Right.
And when we were there, we stayed at it was a NASA facility. I couldn't probably find it on a map, but anyway, it was a NASA facility where they I guess they refurbished the.
So were you in Alabama or were you in?
It was Louisiana.
Okay.
Louisiana. So in New Orleans, they have or at least there was a NASA facility. You have to Google it or whatever. They refurbished the tanks, the fuel tanks or the boosters or whatever, and. It wasn't very big. It was a few buildings. We were there. There were some Canadians there. There were some guys from Naval Special Warfare Group. I can't tell you exactly which specific unit they were with. But anyway, we were all there, and we were staying there. And there was we were there for about a month, and they realized that they didn't want us there. I guess somebody up high in the government didn't want Marines helping people in New Orleans or something. I don't know. But anyway, they made us leave. But before we left, there was an astronaut came there. And I remember in third grade, I don't know if you ever had this, when I was in third grade, an astronaut came to talk to us.
Yeah.
And she was telling us about, like, how it was to train, and then, how there was no such thing as an anti-gravity room, and how the plane, and that's kind of what got me turned on to it, because she was telling us about the plane, the Vomit Comet, where they do the zero gravity stuff, and I was like, man, that'd be cool. Well, this dude... He comes there, and there is, and he's talking to us, and it was kind of reminded me of like a bunch of being back in third grade, and it was like someone thought they needed.
Completely awestruck.
Yeah, well, no, we weren't. I mean, it was Marines, and them, actually Fallujah vet Marines. So anything but awestruck, probably the most disrespectful people on the planet at this point, and not wanting to be there, completely hating life, hadn't. Back in America, but living like, back overseas. And anyway, so this guy's talking. And he's telling everybody about being an astronaut, and I'm a platoon sergeant at the time, and I remember looking at my guys, begging God, please do not let him ask for questions.
Right.
Please do not allow him to ask for questions. And sure enough, he got done, and he asked for questions. He's like, anybody got any questions? And I knew it was coming. I didn't know what form. I didn't know exactly what was going to be said, but I knew it was coming. One of my Marines raises his hand. He goes, go ahead. So how many times have you been in space? Well, I haven't been to space yet. And he goes on and on about the training cycle and all this other kind of stuff, and how it worked, and how he was on basically waiting, and he had to go through yada yada yada. He went on for like 5-10 minutes. He got done, and my Marine says, "So you're not an astronaut?" And then he was like, "Well, no, it would be it would be like you're a Marine, right? But what if you hadn't been to war?" And of course, immediately, but we have been to war. We are Marines. So, and I was like, oh man, somebody shut him up. But the astronaut, like the Apollo guys, the guys that went to the moon, You know?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you look up at the moon and you're like, dude, like, we look at it and it's there, but it's not real. And I think to myself, like, what if I was actually getting ready to actually go there? You know, like, what did Neil Armstrong, like, what was going through their mind when they were actually loading up in this giant missile that was slingshotting them to an asteroid?
Here's an interesting intersection into our talking about, and I don't want to segue there now.
Yeah.
Maybe plant a seed for later. So, in The Exorcist, the movie The Exorcist,
Right.
There's a dinner party downstairs in the living room in the parlor when Reagan is upstairs, and she comes downstairs and she urinates on the floor.
Yeah, that was really rude at a dinner party.
And she points at a guy in that party, and she says, "You're gonna die up there." Okay. Peter Blatty wrote the novel, right? That guy was an astronaut.
Okay.
It's not fleshed out in the movie at all. Then years later, a movie got made which has had two different titles. It had Powers Booth in it, and it came out originally as Twinkle Twinkle Killer Kane, and then was released later as The Ninth Configuration. And it's about a guy who is sent to a psychiatric hospital in Louisiana, I think, that's like a castle. He's the new director. He's to take it over. And as the movie goes on, you come to realize that he's not the new director. This is his therapy to get him to come out of his crazy by making him think that he's the director of this loony bin with all of these PTSD military guys and the astronauts there. That's actually Peter Blatty's sequel to The Exorcist.
Oh, really?
Like,
so it just took a character and like told its story.
and then and it's connected back to that demonic possession. And the astronaut is one of the people that went into space, and he went absolutely
crazy,
insane once he got detached from the earth and just like lost his mooring altogether. I don't remember all the details, but I just think it's a really weird and strange connection when I found out, because I saw that movie when it was called Twinkle Twinkle Killer Kane, and I thought it was fascinating, and nobody had ever heard of it.
So is it like, can you like watch it on Amazon now, Netflix?
I don't. I would doubt it, but look for it. I'll look for it too, because I saw it when it came out.
Yeah.
And nobody had heard about it at all, and it was just fascinating. But like it doesn't seem anything like. And then later, when I was writing my novel, I went back to read Peter Blatty's The Exorcist. I needed to.
Yeah.
And then I read a bunch of interviews with him, because I like that guy as a person a great deal. And he talked about The Ninth Configuration and how that really was the sequel, and he was trying to do something that was much larger than just this one book on The Exorcist, about a whole bunch of other stuff. And so I'm going to have to, when I was researching, I ran into all that stuff, and I just thought, man.
I'm going to check that out. There's a movie finally about the moon landing, about the Apollo. It's got the Ryan, whatever
Gosling?
his name. Is it Ryan Gosling? Yeah, it's got him in there. I always get him and the other one, the other Ryan. That's
Seacrest?
No, not
I'm kidding.
No, I don't care about Ryan Secret. No, the one that was
Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, Ryan Reynolds. I was gonna say the Green Lantern, but it's like his worst movie ever. But so the new movie about the Apollo landings, and actually the next question was, what's your favorite conspiracy theory? So I will start this one out, because I do believe that we went to the moon. But I'm just going to go and give a disclaimer. I do believe we went to the moon. But in this movie, I always thought it was funny. We never had a movie about the moon landing. It was like, it's been like, what, 1960?
Well, we did have the movie about the fake moon landing.
What are you talking about? Oh, you're talking about the Capricorn.
Yeah, Capricorn 6 or whatever.
Did you hear that, Sasha? Someone else is in Capricorn 6 besides me.
I don't remember if that's a number.
No, it's Capricorn something.
I
can't even remember. Right? Capricorn 1, yeah. Yeah, she hates that. I made her watch that movie the other because it was about the fake moon landing, and in that movie, and that's what happens in the movie. They're getting ready to go to the moon. No one's been to the moon before. No, it was Mars. It was Mars.
Wow.
Getting ready to, but basically the same thing. They're getting ready to go to Mars, and they decide they can't go, and they decide they're going to fake it. And these guys, they tell them at the last minute. They get them in the rocket. And they're sitting there, and then like these dudes think that they're going. I mean, they're not like in on it at all. No one is.
Yeah.
And they pull them out of the rocket, and then they take them and explain it to them. Basically, don't give them an option. And then when these guys don't go along with it, they have to escape, and then Capricorn 1 actually says dumbest movie ever. See, she actually responded there. Anyway, it's not. She said she literally replied dumbest movie ever, and it was pretty cheesy. It had O.J. Simpson in it.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
It had O.J. Simpson.
Yeah, you're losing cool points. Like,
come on, man, come on, dude. You guys got to watch it. In fact, we're gonna watch it together.
Let me go ahead and say no.
But the new movie is getting a lot of flack because they omitted any scenes, or allegedly. I haven't seen this, so I don't know. But they omitted scenes with the American flag in it. The scenes where the American flag was planted, saluted, all that stuff, in favor of a more international human achievement, and they're catching all of a lot of criticism for that. Like, what do you think about that? I mean,
as somebody who teaches film, I always hold that kind of stuff in abeyance. I don't like reading pre-reviews of things. I like to go in just because if there's an integral reason, if let's say I saw that movie and I didn't hear anything about that at all, and the movie was so well made that I didn't even notice that they didn't do that scene.
Yeah,
right.
It would be,
and you have to be careful with that kind of stuff too, because if you do that scene in sort of the wrong way, you might end up with the impression that the whole thing was about something that it wasn't really about. So it really depends on what the film is about.
Yeah, the context of the thing.
Exactly. So I would hold my judgment, until I saw it, because I read that stuff. But it's a lot of people talking. And look, I loved Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings, and I started reading Tolkien when I was in the 6th grade, and he's responsible for me becoming a reader, a writer, probably for getting my PhD.
Yeah.
And I was watching the director's cut, the full version of The Lord of the Rings. We watch it every Christmas. But I decided to watch the commentary, which is always a mistake, because just about every actor associated with that movie is just dumb as toast, and they don't know Tolkien. The guy that played Saruman, that actor knows Tolkien, he understands him, and the guy that played Gimli, the dwarf, that guy understands Tolkien. But everybody else, I'm like, turn off the commentary. They're just playing a part.
Yeah, they're just actors.
It's just like, I wish I'd never heard Elijah Wood telling me what he thought this was about, because he just has no idea what he's talking about. So I always take that stuff with a grain of salt.
I can't wait to watch the movie. I'm going to watch it. I've read people talking, guys,
and I just saw
boycotting it or whatever.
Yeah, I just saw a headline today. I didn't read the commentary, but I saw the headline and it said movie of the year, and it was in some conservative magazine. So it was a conservative, right? And you could see Ryan Gosling's picture on it. So I'm like, all right, somebody likes this film. I didn't read it, but I'll have to check it out.
Well, I just one of the biggest with the moon landing conspiracy theorists, one of the big things is obviously that it was made on a set and all this other kind of stuff. So I wonder if the reason why they haven't made a moon landing movie, a real one, a legitimate one, about it would actually happen any sooner, was because they was afraid it would add more fuel to the fire.
Yeah.
As far as, and now we've come so far, I guess it doesn't matter. I mean, now we can create anything in special effects. So I mean, there's the special effects are there that we could probably make a moon landing look realer than it actually looked.
Yeah.
But they, there was a university thing where they went and they did a simulation and they explained all of the abnormalities with because people were saying that the lighting was wrong and this and this, and then they reconstructed it with a computer thing and they showed exactly how it would look, and it ended up being exactly like it was. So anyway, all right, well, those are the questions. Kind of went an hour longer than I expected, but real quick, I just want to say thanks to these guys for coming on. To my left, we've got Greg Borse. He was here last time, and he's coming back on, and he's going to be talking to us about his book. Now, your book just got you did get a release date on it?
Yeah, it's November 15th.
November 15th, and that is The Corruptibles.
It's called The Incorruptibles, a novel. It's being published by Isabella Media, and it'll be available across all e-formats, Amazon.com, ebook, Kindle, and then I don't know how quickly, but it'll show up in Barnes & Noble, Walmart, Costco, Walgreens. It's
just to get that out there, I don't buy a book unless it's signed by the author.
Well, there you go.
So, I mean, just putting that out there.
Yeah. Well, and we're actually going to talk about the book more in detail again, but just to kind of give it before I switch gears here, you'd be interested in the book. I don't know if you watched the other one, but it's kind of a it's.
Well, you just asked what's my favorite conspiracy theory. The one in my book.
There you go. There you go. So we're going to come back to that, and we're going to talk about, kind of give a revisit to the book and the plot and stuff like that, and kind of plug it real quick because I want to hear about it again. And to my right, one of my best friends in the world, Jason Akers, and Jason is a lifetime narcotics officer, and currently the forever, as long as I've known you, supervisory agent of the 10th Judicial Drug Task Force. Appreciate you, brother, for coming on, man.
No problem, man.
Actually got to go do some work this morning, so it's been a long day for us, but I do appreciate you coming. Weekend review. So, had a pretty interesting weekend. We're going to get into a couple things. On the light side of things, for the UFC fans, we had the long-awaited Khabib and Conor McGregor fight, and this was one that was, if any fight's been hyped up, probably as much or more than Conor's last fight with Floyd Mayweather when he went boxing. Is probably this one. Now, obviously, I'm a green and whatever, so I'm still showing my support for my man McGregor. But for those that don't know, I'm pretty sure everybody on the planet that cares has already seen the fight on YouTube or whatever. Conor lost the fight. He was kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier. He was grappled. He was taken down. He pretty much was dominated during the fight from the grappling standpoint. He did manage to kind of come back to his feet. About the third round, he was able to swap punches with Khabib some, but in the end, he was taken down again and it ended with a rear naked choke. So,
and he did tap out?
He did tap out, which was really weird. And I was kind of hoping, I don't know if you got a chance to see it. I was kind of hoping to get some.
I missed it.
But it was really weird, and anybody that wants to comment on it can, but it really didn't look like, and I want to start with the end, but it didn't look like the choke was sunk in. He really, to me, like he had his chin underneath it, like he was above the jawline, like it was coming across there. I didn't think he had to choke. I did think he was going to get the choke. I thought it was just a matter of time before it happened, but I just didn't think he had it right then. And then I see Conor tapping, and that shocked me. Not that he got choked out, but that he was that the blood choke was in at that time. So in my experience, it really just didn't look like he had it. But I didn't have both angles, so maybe I was wrong. But basically, what happened in the fight, from a layman's standpoint, is Conor's camp had focused during their training on very defensively, and their idea was, as I understand it, the first round they expected to be taken down. I was hoping that they wouldn't. I don't see how that would be okay to me. If you're going to be taken down in the first round, you're going to be taken down in the rest of them. But they expected to be taken down in the first round, and the strategy was for Conor to not use any energy and defend himself on the ground and make his opponent use a lot of energy, and not focus too much on getting back up and burning too much energy, but basically make his opponent burn a lot of energy trying to work him.
So their version of the rope-a-dope?
Yeah. So, and that kind of happens. He was taken down fairly fast. I thought, and I didn't know this at the time, I thought Conor's defense was just basically going to be a takedown defense and then really offensive striking from standing. I that was my idea what he would have tried to do, what his camp would have trained for. But according to his coaches, it was basically to stay alive on the first round and probably the second round too. And then the third round, once he had expended a lot of energy, his opponent, then to get back on his feet and start striking with him and hopefully get a knockout. And that's kind of what happened. Conor was taken down real fast. I can't tell you on the replay, how fast it was, but I know it was fast. And I remember watching it, and I said to myself, "This is bad," because this is probably the greatest grappler, in MMA right now. I mean, not just the greatest, but the margin, is probably pretty deep right there. But when he took him down, it was very decisive, and it just, watching it, Conor looked like he was in trouble. I expected him to get submitted or choked very quickly, and he didn't. So as time went on, Conor wasn't, you could tell Khabib was having problems with him and couldn't get exactly what he wanted and was using a lot of energy. So your hopes started kind of getting up, and then he was basically saved by the bell, went into round two. Was taken back down, and and then in round three, I think he got maybe he got up. I'd have to watch it again, but I know in round three he was on his feet. And then my predictions was that if Conor lost, it would be obviously a quick submission, and that if he didn't, it would be that he tires out because cardio, but he didn't really tire out. I mean, in the third round when he stood back up, they both looked a little winded, but he did not look, real bad. And they started, doing some stand up. Everything looked good, and then eventually he was taken back down, and that was kind of the end of it. So, my prediction for that fight was that I wanted him to win. I know he can win if he could stay on his feet and strike with a guy. But obviously, no one's been able to stay on their feet with this dude. So why would he stand up and strike with Conor if he can take him down? And he obviously can take him down. Some people have commented and were asking me about, what did I perceive in a rematch? I don't see a rematch going much different than it went the first time, honestly. Unless, the McGregor camp, the coach did say that he felt like they focused too much on defensive striking, or defensive, not defensive striking, but focused too much on defensive grappling and not enough on offensive striking. So he feels that if they would have done that, then maybe things would have went better because Conor's really accurate, really powerful, and his chances of a knockout would have been greater. And I agree with that. I don't see, though, personally. I think that obviously a rematch is big money, and Dana White's all about big money. But I don't see it happening quick. I think probably we're looking.
Do you think the only way for McGregor to take this guy out is by a knockout?
Yeah, I mean, when people say it's kind of like, being a Conor fan, I'm not one of those that make excuses for him. I mean, he was dominated on the ground. There's no way around that, and he was dominated on the ground. So if someone asked me, is there a way around that? Yeah, I would love to say that, that he could get that. Somebody made the comment, well, anyone can get anyone in the rear naked choke, but no one can knock Conor out. No one's going to, go stand up. Well, first of all, grappling is 50, it's mixed martial arts for a reason. It's not just boxing or striking or stand-up striking. This is mixed martial arts, so grappling is as much as it and legitimate as anything else. So you can't, to say that is making excuses. Yeah. And I don't know that there's anyone that can, in that weight class, that can grapple with this dude. So I don't see it happening with Conor.
He fight at 144. What would they fight now?
145, I believe.
That would have been Bruce Lee's weight class. Bruce Lee was 146, so he probably could have cut a pound and fought in that weight class. Matt had a question that was good, and it was what would have been Bruce Lee's weight class. And he's at 146, and he didn't have really any body fat, so he could have cut. Yeah, he could have cut down to one. Hell, I don't know. Maybe he could have cut down to 135, but he could have fought in that weight class, and he would have beat the hell out of both of them probably at the same time. That'll be my prediction.
There you go. So, aside from, to answer your question, I do think that the only way that Conor is going to beat him is going to be a stand up, and he's going to knock him out, and that's it. I don't see, outside of him getting extremely lucky in the ground, I just don't see it happening. So, and I really don't see that there's going to be a whole lot of interest from the UFC right now, pending all the investigation. Now, we hadn't gotten to what happened afterward. Yeah. So if you didn't see this, and I can't imagine anyone caring that hadn't seen this, but if you didn't see this, what happened afterwards was Habib got into some type of altercation with Conor's cornerman and jumped the fence. They got into a fight. Multiple people jumped the fence inside. Conor got into it with at least two other guys, I think maybe even three. One, he was striking to the front, and another one come up behind him and was hitting Conor in the back of the head, and then and it went back and forth, and then it spilled over into the audience. It was chaos everywhere. When they finally got it over with, they Dana White refused to present Habib with a belt at that time. They got him out of the building, and last I checked, they were still holding his purse.
That's what I heard.
They'd given Conor his money finally. Originally, they held them both. They give Conor his money, and so the future of the fight, obviously the drama's there.
Yeah.
But we'll see. So that's on that side. The other thing that happened this weekend, and this is on a completely different note. I'm really interested to see what you guys think about this, because this is something I didn't follow very much, but I think both of you did. Is the Kavanaugh nomination?
Yeah.
So, Jason, like, I'm gonna let you start this one. Give me your input and your opinion on what happened, and
I think that it was. I mean, it's just what we talked about, that, you know, dragging it out. But what we've talked about in the past as it relates to the politics in America right now. And, I think that the Democratic Party on the national level, this is the future. This is the future of politics. They don't have to. They don't have to destroy you. They just got to tarnish you to the point where nobody wants to touch you, and they have to, you know, and they have to do so with an issue that is a political hot topic, whether it's, you know, wanting to make you seem insensitive or not caring about children or homeless people or veterans or police officers. You know, they want to poison the public's mind just long enough to cause just enough problem to keep you out of the position that the other party wants you in.
Right.
And I think it's done on both sides of the fence. I think the Republicans do it. I think the Democrats do it. But I think this was as classless of a political hit job as probably I think I've ever seen. You know, it's where we're at. I don't think that I don't doubt that Dr. Ford had some type of incident occur in high school. You know, really, who didn't have some kind of incident occur in high school? I don't know that Kavanaugh was the guy. I don't think she did. So many holes in her story. The fact that, I mean, if we're in a society that's so stupid to think that somebody's going to have an incident occur that minor. Now, I could understand someone who was physically assaulted, as in raped or abused,
right.
Keeping those secrets for years, and my heart breaks for those people. But some guy throws you on a bed, and that was the gist of her thing, and basically tried to kiss her, what she's claiming, and she's going to hold it all this time, and she's going to behave in ways throughout her life that, you know, she you know, one of her ex-boyfriends, she stole his credit card, and this whole fear of, I'm scared of flying. I couldn't come out here last week because I'm scared of flying, but then you've got all these pictures of you flying. I think that if the American public believes that crap, then nobody's safe.
Yeah.
And that's an issue that young men are facing across the board. And you've seen a lot of people. I think Candace Owens was a big voice for looking out for young men. That these things, the Duke lacrosse thing, you know, they were all accused of rape, and none of it was true. Yeah. And it ruined these guys' lives. And as you and I discussed with Kavanaugh, what must his wife have thought? Sitting there having to be right there next to him and hear all these accusations made by a woman who, well, I'm not sure exactly what happened. I'm not really sure this. I'm not really sure that. You know, before you go out, you decide to wait 30-something years, and you mail a letter to a senator, and that senator sits on it until the last minute. You know, if Feinstein's goal was to make sure that the best person was nominated, she should have gone to the other side and said, "Listen, this guy's got some history. Yeah, you might want to check it out. We don't want to, you know, let's expedite this. You might want to check it out." But instead, it was wait to the last minute. You know,
wait until the hearing was over.
Wait until the hearing was over.
She waited until the hearing was over.
You know, you're not concerned about a victim.
No.
When you wait till it's all said and done, and then you throw that
because
out.
Two things happened. Right. She had a press conference and said, "I've come into possession of information about Judge Kavanaugh, and I've given it to the FBI. You know, I didn't release it earlier because I wanted to honor the wishes of anonymity of the person that brought this accusation." And then the next day, from what Dr. Ford said, her name was leaked by somebody, and so she decided to go ahead and tell the Washington Post that they could make her name public. I mean, that's just a strange set of circumstances. The whole thing could have been handled, and she could have had her anonymity protected by Feinstein, Onshoot, the Judicial Committee. Grassley bent over backwards to give her what she was asking for. He said, "I'll send staffers out to California to interview you privately." You know, and this is, of course, after her name is already public.
Offered to fly her in. That's where the whole fear of flying
he said he would send his staff to her.
That was after. That was in response to her, well, I'm scared of flying. That's kind of like saying, I'm hungry. Well, what do you want to eat? Well, I don't want that.
And I'm like,
you're not really hungry.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I don't really doubt that something did happen to her at some point, but I'm not sure that Kavanaugh was the person that was there or was involved in it. And what concerned me, too, was that I can understand memory lapses that go back 30, 36 years, but I can't understand memory lapses that are happening within the last 3 months. And when discrepancies in what she told the Washington Post, what she told her therapist, what she told Feinstein, and what she told the committee came up, I started to say, that's a little bit disturbing to me.
The thing that bothers me the most about all of it, there's two things that bother me about it. One is young men can make a bad impression and have to worry about how it's going to be spun later on. And I'm not saying that, we're minimizing anything. The other thing is how hard does this make things like this, and having worked rapes and having worked child molestations and sexual abuses in the past, this kind of stuff makes it harder for true victims.
Right.
And it basically puts people in a situation where they have a hurdle. They're dealing with emotional issues on reporting things anyway.
Right.
And so now they've got this hurdle of going, well, they're not going to believe me because, see, this woman over here said this and nobody believed her. And when they took this guy's side, they took Kavanaugh's side, and that's how it's been spun in the media. The left is spinning it. So it makes it harder for victims who are actual victims of real crimes. It puts a little thing in their mind saying, I don't want to be cross-examined about this. This is not something I want to do. So sometimes maybe in an effort to derail, and all this comes down to is they wanted to stall us off till the midterms are over. Hopefully the Dems they thought they wanted to flip the Senate, and that they could have better control over who got nominated. That's all this was. It was a carefully drawn out stalling tactic, and it was well designed, I guess. I mean, they had the evidence.
Well, but I think I agree with you, and I would say that in and of itself is proof that the Democrats used Dr. Ford.
Oh, absolutely.
And it just appalls me that
hey,
she's a victim.
She is.
But they use her for as a political pawn. All the way to the end.
I think she was a victim in the big scheme of things, but I think she thoroughly enjoyed her 10 minutes of fame, and she's cool with being the next Anita Hill.
Yeah.
But by the same token, this, you remember back when I don't remember who was running for president or what, but the Joe the plumber guy, the Republicans did the same thing with that guy.
Yeah.
They pimped that guy out for the average guy over here. He's out, and it's just national level politics. It's all disgusting to me. Asked a good question. The polygraph, I think she took a polygraph, and the polygraph was, I think she passed it, if I'm correct.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
she did.
She took a polygraph.
It was a strange one, though.
Yeah. Did this happen? It did? All right, where it's over.
No, is what you wrote down true?
Right.
And is there anything in what you wrote? There were 2 questions that were asked. Only 2. I've never heard of a polygraph that was only 2 questions.
Which was attacked for, relentlessly for 8 years. I think President Obama was attacked relentlessly for 8 years, at least by, opposing sides. And then now, of course, Trump. And it just seems like the attacks are getting more personal and worse and worse. And is that the case? And if it's the case,
I think we tend to, because we're in our bubble, exaggerate a little bit,
right,
about the intensity of things. If we could take a time machine and go back to see how vicious politics was during JFK and LBJ's time, we might be shocked to find out it was as bad as it was.
And let me interrupt you. And kind of goes back to what you were saying. We're seeing it more now.
We're right. We're paying attention now, whereas when I was a little kid,
Technology
I had no idea.
Phones.
But you're right. It stretches back to the end of the Vietnam War, LBJ, and then Nixon, right? And Watergate.
Yeah.
And then we got Carter, which was kind of like a 4-year vacation from anything serious, except the world went to shit. And that was a formative time for me because I was in high school.
Right.
And I remember thinking, this guy just came on television and told me to turn down my thermostat and put on a sweater, and there are gas lines, and we've got hostages in Iran.
Right.
What is going on? And I was young. I just thought,
I remember that. I remember that. I remember feeling like, well, hopefully the Russians won't invade us.
It was just strange. And so, and Casey, I got to tell you, I'm old enough because this is when I started paying attention. But the vicious attacks against Reagan are almost word for word exactly the same ones against Trump.
Really?
Oh my gosh! You can go back to the newspapers and read what they wrote about Reagan back then.
Okay.
And
it's the same script.
It's the same script.
Yeah.
It's like
the Anita Hill stuff with Clarence Thomas was the exact same script that was with Kavanaugh and Ford.
And,
now, I'm not saying
before that, it was Judge Bork. It was
right,
Bork
yeah,
first, and then it was
right,
Clarence Thomas.
And is that okay? So, and is that both sides? Because all right, so what I remember about Reagan, I was young. I was like, Reagan was my, I was my son's age. I was in third grade-ish, and I remember. And what I remember about Reagan was, I lived in a Republican bubble. Was even then it was like he's the greatest president ever. And I remember like when he was running, that came from my parents or whatever, everyone loved him. But I also remember that the arguments against the Democratic candidate were very similar to the arguments right now. Obviously I'm pro Second Amendment. I've got a Second Amendment flag right there hanging off the front of the thing. But I'm saying, like, I remember when I was a kid being afraid that my guns were going to be taken next week, and today we're afraid our guns are going to be taken next week. Is the threat more serious in reality, or is it just how we remember it? Is that the same?
I think it's an admixture, but I will say this.
Okay.
I think that there's been a sea change, too, because even during the time when Reagan and Carter and those guys, and Clinton, all the way through, up until maybe Obama, and I'm not saying Obama was the cause of this.
Yeah.
But one of the things I noted is that it used to be that we had this sort of, there were two rules. One was national politics ends at the water's edge.
Right.
You don't talk bad about the sitting American president when you're giving a speech over in Prague or in Paris, or you just don't do that.
Right.
Carter was the first one to start breaking that rule post-presidency, and he did it against Bush, and it was unheard of.
Bush Jr., Bush Senior.
W.
Okay.
W. Yeah. And then it became de rigueur. It just became the thing. If you're an ex-president, you can say what you want. So we're getting a little bit more of that kind of stuff. The second thing is, and this is just my impression. It used to be that the thing that separated the Democrats from the Republicans, or the progressives from the conservatives, or whatever you want to call them, was that we both wanted the same things. We just disagreed about how to get there.
Right.
That is not true. We don't want the same things, and I think that might be what you're responding to now. That's the difference. We don't want the same things. It's not a matter of we're having policy arguments anymore. We're having flat out foundational philosophical ideological.
Let me tell you where it comes down. What that is to answer your question. 48 to 50, I think, was the vote, right?
Yeah.
48 to 50.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
That's why you're seeing I think you're seeing the fights that you're seeing. Is because, listen, if the Republicans could have if they could have pushed Kavanaugh through 60-40, the Dems would have waited and maybe used their capital on something else.
And I think this is a great point.
But what happens is when you're the more you're fighting, the more tough the fight, the more desperate you get.
Yeah.
And this is this is a lifetime appointment with Kavanaugh. He's not going anywhere unless he dies.
Yeah. Right.
And they're going to have to deal with him. And if you notice with John Roberts, younger, maybe better shape, and you've got Kavanaugh, younger, going to be there for a long time.
Right.
When you score a 2 or 3, and you don't know what Ginsburg's going to do. She looks like she's 900 years old. And then you got Clarence
She's
Thomas.
Preserved well,
is
though.
older.
He's older.
Really, honestly, I think this is didn't Trump? Who's the last appointee?
Gorsuch.
Yeah, Neil Gorsuch was the last.
But that was kind of a tie appointment because he was replacing a very conservative
he was
judge.
replacing Scalia.
So it didn't change the composition of the court. This one changes
this
the composition of the court.
And if Ginsburg,
if she's the next one to retire,
she says she's not.
Yeah.
But God has a way of retiring you when you get to be in your 90s or whatever she is. But you also have Thomas.
Yeah.
That's the interesting way to put it.
That's completely possible. And if you look at if you look at the midterms, if the Republicans can hold what they've got, or maybe even pick up, and I think people are really underestimating Trump. Trump's obnoxious. I get that, but he's been right so far.
Yeah.
He said he was going to win the presidency. Nobody said he would, and he did. So
well, somebody asked me about that the other day, and I think it goes back to the question too, culturally, what's going on. Because the reason that Trump won is because people who nominally were Republican got to the point where they were so disgusted with the establishment for not fighting back, for not delivering what they promised, that the Jeb Bush and the Bush wing of the Republican Party was basically rejected during the primaries. And that was fascinating to watch, because when he announced his candidacy, I was like, what?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was like, this has got to be a joke. This guy has been supporting the Democrats his entire life. Is this a Clinton plan? I honestly thought that the Clintons got Trump to run in the Republican primary.
Yeah,
just to clear the deck.
Just to disrupt.
But then my students asked me about it the other day. I said, but if you would ask me what my dream ticket was when the Republican Party started,
right,
I would have said, give me Greg Abbott, governor of Texas, and Mike Pence. And I know Greg Abbott. I've known Greg Abbott for 25 years. I've had dinner with him and his wife Cecilia back when he was right before he became Attorney General.
Yeah.
And I've been to his house. My parents have been to his house. I'm not great friends with him, but over the years, we've talked, and I really like that guy. So when Trump chose Pence as his VP, my attitude took a little bit of a turn on what was going on here. I was like, well, maybe this is not a joke. He's serious about this. Everything since he's been president has shown me that he was serious about what he promised to do. He's focused on it. He's working on it, and so I think he's a cultural phenomenon that only could have happened at the moment that it happened. You've got the Democrats putting up Hillary Clinton as their candidate, as if she deserves the presidency finally, because she's been waiting so long for it and she's suffered so much for it. But she really doesn't have any. What was her message?
Yeah.
I think her slogan should have been "It's my turn."
Yeah.
But
well, I mean, she would have had a really strong argument with that, because I mean, she all but had to step aside for President Obama. She
was actually leading that, and then people started. Forgot about her, and then she was actually ahead there at the beginning when Obama came on.
Yeah.
They underestimated it. Yeah. Barack Obama will go down as one of the best public speakers, and his ability to rouse a crowd was great.
Let me tell you something that's funny about that. I do public speaking, and I cannot read from a script to save my life. I can't. I have to do it. I have to have notes, and I have to do it extemporaneously. I'm a lecturer, but I go in, I know what I'm going to say, and that's the way I feel totally natural. And Obama, as a public speaker, is one of the greatest readers of a teleprompter, and I'm not taking away, because those are his words, right? But the way he does his cadences, and the way he can hit his marks, and the way performatively he is absolutely superb. Yeah. Reagan was like that too, because he had that background in acting. I heard an Obama speech, an extemporaneous speech of Obama that got taped in the Hollywood Hills when he was at a donor's thing, and it was completely incomprehensible. I read the transcript. I'm like, this just doesn't make any sense at all. The guy is talking in circles. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So his talent was for prepared remarks. You know what I mean? Yeah. When I graduated from LSU, guess who the speaker was for my graduation for my PhD? It was George W. Bush.
Right.
He's a terrible teleprompter reader.
Yeah.
He stumbles over his words. He says things wrong.
Yeah.
He comes out. He gives an extemporaneous speech about us.
Fine. Yeah.
And it was perfect. Yeah. And so I was like, oh, okay. So it's a talent thing. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that people are stupider or this. It's just some people are good at this. And Obama, you're right, is going to go down as one of the greatest.
He will go down. His ability to, if he was in the South, is great. If he was in the South and he was preaching or talking, he would use the inflection in his voice to almost sound rhythmically like a pastor, like a Baptist, and it would resonate maybe subconsciously with people, that the same tone and dialect and word, the emphasis on the words. It was brilliant on his part. But like you said, a lot of those guys, we have that. We talk about that with guys with firearms. You put them on a course of fire, and you say, okay, you're going to shoot this many rounds from 25, and they do that every year, and this many from 3 and 7 and 15.
Absolutely.
They master the course and not the firearm. So you get out there and go, okay, we're going to run that same course, but instead,
do it.
What you're going to do now is you're going to do 10 push-ups.
Yeah.
Then you're going to get up, and you're going to do a burpee.
Yeah.
And then you're going to draw your gun and fire, and they're like, oh, whoa, hang on.
Yeah.
And then from 3 yards away, they can't hit the ball outside of the barn. So it's just, and you got some guys that are terrible on the with structure and phenomenal on the fly.
Yeah. And in politics, you had one guy that was terrible at both, and that was George H.W. Bush. Poor guy.
Right.
And he ended up being one term. But And then Bill Clinton, of course, was a guy who could work a room better than anybody that I've ever seen.
Bill Clinton was, I think, probably he and Reagan were two of the greatest presidents I know in my life. I mean, they were phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're great.
I know you got to run, man. We're gonna hang around and finish up some stuff too, but I appreciate you coming
no problem, man. Good to see you again.
And we'll see you. I'm gonna scoot over to his seat.
Hey, no problem. See you soon.
Great to meet you.
All right, Matt.
See you again.
See you.
I'm gonna scoot over here.
If I left anything over there. Hey, throw me my keys. I think they're on the floor.
Yeah, right behind you.
Right there.
So, okay. With I remember when let's see. I remember obviously George Bush Sr. I was still young, like that was 90, 91, 92. Is that right? 92 is when Bill Clinton came in. Is that right? Somewhere around there. Anyway, and I remember watching this and thinking, when Clinton was elected, and then when George Bush was running again, who was Bush Jr. It wasn't Kerry. Was the second term opponent. Who was the first term opponent?
W. He ran against Al Gore.
Oh yeah, of course. The Florida thing.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm thinking of.
Hanging Chads.
Yeah. Okay. So that was early in my Marine Corps time, and I remember when I was watching this, and everyone was saying that Al Gore was going to win because he was going to ride the Bill Clinton coattails. That he was going to win because Bill Clinton had a what was considered a successful presidency, and everyone liked Bill, and Al Gore was a shoo-in. And I was in the Marine Corps. I remember telling guys, because the cool thing about the Marine Corps is you get people from different cultures and different different everything. So you're not just, I know everyone thinks because the table's sitting here with a 2nd Marine Division flag and we're conservative that's not always the case.
Yeah.
But I remember telling guys that George Bush is going to win this election, and when I was asked why I thought that, I said because he's more fun to listen to talk. All right, not getting into comedy. I'm not talking about making fun of him because no one was making fun of him really yet at that point. Maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
Later on in his presidency, it got worse. But I remember thinking, Al Gore's boring as shit. I mean, no one wants to hear this guy talk. I've never watched that documentary he made about climate change.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that it would kill me. I mean, I would probably murder myself. I mean, but
No, he was wooden.
Horrible, horrible, and I'm not saying he would have been a bad president. I don't know. He might have been. I don't know. I'm not even getting political on that. But I'm saying that as far as a speaker, he was horrible. When George Bush ran against, in the second term against John Kerry, I still thought John Kerry was a horrible speaker compared to W. I just thought that, George W. Bush may not have been the most articulate person in the world, but he just seemed to me more generally fun to listen to, and I think most people.
And the other thing about George Bush is that I think he only lost one election he ever entered, and that was the first one he ever was in.
Oh, okay.
Thereafter, George Bush never lost another election. Twice to the governorship. He always won. And what people didn't notice, but if you study his campaigns, he was the most disciplined campaigner of his generation, because there would be 3 messages that they were committed to.
Yeah.
And if you watched him go around the country, he never talked about anything other than those 3 things. He never got off script. He was disciplined. His dad said of him,
please don't get off script. Please don't get off script.
Yeah, and his dad said of him, and when he did, he would get in trouble. You know what I mean? So he was really, really disciplined. And HW said of him, they keep misunderestimating my son, and people made fun of the fact that he used the word misunderestimate, and I'm like, that's exactly true. The Democrats keep misunderestimating George W. Bush because they keep running against him, and guess what? He keeps winning.
Yeah.
And he won his first term for Texas governor.
Yeah.
Against one of the most popular female figures in Democratic Texas lore. I can't remember her name, but she was the one that famously said, "Poor George W. Bush.
Yeah.
He was born with a silver foot in his mouth."
Yeah.
And she was supposed to wipe the floor with him, and he beat her.
Well, did you watch the movie W?
No.
Did you ever? You should watch the movie W. Josh Brolin plays W. Bush.
Yeah.
Plays W.
Yeah.
And obviously the title. But I mean, when Josh Brolin, I thought, it was an anti-Bush movie, no doubt. But I thought Brolin did, like, I couldn't tell watching the movie if it was serious or Saturday Night Live skit.
Right.
I mean, it was, you know what I mean? I mean, of course he did do that. But when Bush won, I wasn't surprised. I told people, and I've been, so far I've I've actually nailed the presidential elections. Whenever President Obama was running, and he ran against was it first term was it McCain?
John McCain. Yeah.
I told everyone, it's like, McCain's gonna get destroyed.
Yeah.
He's gonna get destroyed, and everyone's like, no, he's gonna get destroyed because McCain. I'm not saying he can't talk. He is a seasoned senator.
Yeah.
But I'm saying he's not pleasant to listen to.
The other thing, I really think McCain himself really undid his own campaign in two ways. Because he's a hero, he deserves the status that he has as a POW and as somebody that really sacrificed for his country. But I thought it was totally cynical of him to have chosen Sarah Palin as his VP because it was almost like a stunt.
But why did he do that? Where did she?
Because I felt like, I've read about it since then.
Yeah.
And when McCain passed away, Sarah Palin was not invited to the memorial service.
And what was up with that? Like, did they hate each other?
She was chosen, and then he did not. She's never had anything but gracious things to say about John McCain since they had anything to do with each other.
Yeah.
But the family and McCain himself have said things about her, so there was some beef there, right?
Yeah.
She's never made it public. But I think the main thing that sunk his campaign is, you'll remember, they were neck and neck. Obama and McCain were pretty neck and neck.
Right.
Right before the financial bubble collapse.
Right.
And you'll remember that McCain very publicly said, I'm going to suspend my campaign for 3 days and go to Washington to consult with President Bush about what we ought to do about this financial bubble that's about to explode, because whoever wins this race is going to inherit it from the Bush administration. And Obama agreed, I'll go up there too, right?
Right.
So there was an unprecedented summit between the two opposing candidates, the sitting president, in a room full of experts, powwowing about what should we do. And here was the thing. They got up there, and McCain didn't say anything. Obama, on the other hand, came across as presidential. I'm ready to take on this thing. And I was stunned. I was watching it, and McCain barely said a word while they were in that meeting. It was like he was there to listen.
Right.
And Obama just ran circles around him. And I think that was it for that.
That was it.
You're done.
Well, it seems to me...
And it seemed strange to me because McCain had been in politics for so long. I felt like...
Why would he have done
What
better?
are you doing? You're the one that called for this, and now you've just allowed Obama to actually commandeer the room.
Well, here's the deal. I mean, honestly, I'll keep betting my money on it every presidential election. The person who is the funnest to listen to, whether they're a great speaker or whether they're just whatever, Donald Trump, they just don't give a crap what they say. The person who is the funnest, the most entertaining to listen to seems to win the election.
Well, I think it's
if they're a serious candidate.
You can call it the Ted Cruz problem. You might like everything that Ted Cruz says about anything, but
you don't like
sometimes he doesn't come across as very likable. Yeah. And I think likability is a big thing.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I think
I think Hillary Clinton doesn't come across as likable.
No, she doesn't. It was no wonder to me that Obama beat her out of the spot. I mean, if you put the two, I mean, or whatever. The fact of the matter is that even I like to listen to him versus her.
Yeah.
She's. I mean, who wants to? She's horrible.
But in an eerie,
she's the McCain of the Democratic Party. I don't want to listen to McCain talk.
In an eerie predictor of the Hillary Trump campaign.
Yeah.
Obama got the Democratic nomination,
right? Because
he worked the rules of the Democratic primary a lot smarter than she did. He outflanked her in every state with the caucuses, and he made sure that he had those super delegates lined up in a way that she wasn't paying attention to doing. So fast forward to Hillary running against Trump, and I was one of the few people that predicted that Trump would win.
Right.
Now I had to wait until a week out.
Yeah.
But I was having a conversation with my brother-in-law, and he said, well, Hillary's going to be a president anyway. I said, I don't think so. I'll bet you a 6-pack of beer that Trump is going to win. And I said, I think he's going to win by at least 5 percentage points, but I don't want to make any predictions.
Right.
I mean, on that count, I can't tell. He said, why in the world would you say that Trump was going to win? And I don't remember if I told him, ask me after the election's over, and I'll tell you why I thought that. I think that's what I did. And so I waited. He won. And then I was talking to my brother-in-law again, and he said, why did you think that Trump was going to win? I said, because I kept hearing in the news that Hillary was up on Trump anywhere from 9 to 12, 10, 12, 15, sometimes as high as 15 percentage points, right?
Yeah.
Nationally. And I'm like, we don't elect presidents nationally. We elect presidents state by state. So what I did is I looked at the percentage of her advantage in every state versus Trump's.
Yeah.
And I found out that her entire advantage was in California and New York. You can only win California once, and you can only win New York once. So I took them off the table, and I looked at the percentages, and Trump was up by 5 points.
Wow.
So, because she can only win those states once. That's why you're hearing people now saying we need to get rid of the Electoral College and just go to a straight popular vote. Hillary won more popular votes, but she won them all in California and New York. And you notice what Trump's strategy was. Where did he go in the campaign? He went to the Rust Belt. He went to Michigan. People laughed at him when he went to Wisconsin, and I think he went to Minnesota too.
Yeah.
Did he go to California? Not once. Did he campaign in his own home of Manhattan, where Trump Tower is? No, he didn't campaign in New York. Why? I can't win New York. Why would I waste my money there?
Right.
And what's Hillary doing at the end of the campaign? She went to Arizona to see if she could flip Arizona just to rub it in the Republicans' face that she's so charismatic she could take a red state. That's not going to make a difference in the Electoral College. I mean, Arizona's worth how many votes? So whoever she hired to do her campaign strategy should never work in electoral politics again.
Well, they probably won't.
It was terrible.
I mean, they probably won't. I mean, this is somebody who should have won.
Yeah.
By everyone thought she was going to win just by the fault, like you said, it's her turn.
Mm-hmm.
You know, hey, what's my slogan? It's my turn. And if you, in my mind, if you couldn't give Hillary Clinton a win, at that point, then despite the reasoning,
going back to the Obama thing, I had one student come in after the election was over, and she was like, "Dr. Borse, what happened?" I was like, "You tell me." She's like, "I don't know," And I said, "Well, let me ask you. You remember how enthusiastic you were about Obama when you were voting in your first presidential?" She's like, "Yes." I was like, "Did you have that this time?" She's like, "Oh."
Yeah.
I was like, "Did your friends feel that way about Hillary Clinton?
Yeah.
Did they go out and vote like you wanted to? Were they as excited about it?" She's like, "No." I said, "That's what happened."
Well, and I think both of them, both Trump and Obama, did virtually the same thing. Coming out of, I think they were the ones that carried on the crusade to change.
Yeah.
And really, Obama's message was literally change. Yeah. Trump's message was basically change. Drain the swamp, which is essentially the same thing. And I think both of them, charismatically, my brother said, he just commented on there, President Obama was charismatic. I think both him and Trump were charismatic about the same thing. That was, a dramatic change. I think the difference in them is one of them physically seems to be doing it.
Yeah.
You
can have your opinion about that, because that goes back to the philosophical differences between what people want this country to do and how it's supposed to be and fundamentally what it is. But there's another big difference between the coalitions that have coalesced around the opposing sides. And this is a guess on my part.
Okay.
But I think if you drill down into the progressives who got so hysterical over the Kavanaugh thing, right? Mm-hmm. You're not going to find among those people that were protesting a unified reason for why they're angry. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
What you're going to find is a bunch of marginalized groups that have coalesced as progressives that actually don't agree with each other about very fundamental things. When you look at the people that are showing up to see Donald Trump in Tennessee and in Mississippi and in the places where he is turning out, I mean, massive crowds, right now.
Yeah.
Right now, massive crowds. What you're going to find in that group is you're going to find a uniformity, a very, very simple reason why they're enthusiastic about this. And it's pretty simple, but they're all pretty much in agreement with each other. Whereas the Black Lives Matter movement does not really agree totally with the LGBTQ movement in some ways.
Yeah.
And they don't agree with each other with the Antifa necessarily, right? You were talking about Saul Alinsky, rules for radicals. And I would recommend to our viewers that they familiarize themselves with a guy named David Horowitz, who was raised as a red diaper communist in the United States and was raised as a Saul Alinsky radical from the inside.
Right.
And then a friend of his was murdered in San Francisco, and he realized who and what he was working for on a very personal level. And he realized that everything that he was working for was not what he thought it was. I read his book a few years ago, his autobiography, which talks about his change, his big change. And I got finished with it, and I thought it was so good. And he takes a lot of flack, by the way. He's a controversial guy.
Right.
He's the kind of guy that if he gets invited to a campus to speak, there'll be people protesting and trying to shut him down and stuff like that. But I read his book, and then when I was finished with it, I liked it so much that I picked up my laptop did a little bit of research, found his email address, and my son-in-law walked in. He's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I just finished this book, and it is really, really good." He's like, "Who are you writing to?" I said, "I'm writing to David Horowitz," and he said, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah," and I said, "And I'll bet you dollars to donuts that within 48 hours I hear back from him." And he texted me the next day. Just a nice little thank you, because I didn't write a big, long, elaborate thing for him. I just wrote him a note of appreciation that I wish I had read your autobiography 10 years ago. I just read it. I just wanted to say, hey, thumbs up. And he sent me a note back.
Who is the Democratic Party? Who do you think they're going to bring to the?
Well, I think we got a sea change. I think the Bernie Sanders branch is the new wave. And I think you got the Cory Bookers and what's the Osario Cortez. I think that's the new face. And in fact, they display exactly what I'm talking about. There's no unanimity among those new faces about what the progressive message necessarily is going to be. And so it's going to be hard because they've turned themselves into a party of they're like a big tent party of coalition of smaller groups that themselves. Well, I'll give you a case in point. So a month ago there was a parade in London, an LGBTQ parade, and the first group that was in the parade, leading the parade, were a group of lesbians whose cause is take the L out. Take the L out of LGBT. Take us out. And
they need to take a letter out because I'm getting confused. They seem to be adding one every week, and I don't really know what the term is.
But in all seriousness, I read the article because I wanted to know, what's the issue here? You know what I mean? Because people were mad that they were even in the parade, but they got a permit and they were in the parade. Their issue is that apparently there are certain transgenders who are arguing that there's no such thing as a lesbian because lesbians are really men trapped inside women's bodies who are attracted to women, and so they should actually go ahead and transition. And the lesbians are fighting back saying, no, we're women who are attracted to women, leave us alone. You're saying we're illegitimate. And when I started to see all this stuff being created in the laboratory of literary theory in the 1990s, and that's where it started, I thought, man, this is going to be interesting.
What do you mean it was created in the laboratory?
Okay, so there's a theorist named Michel Foucault.
Okay.
And he doesn't call himself a philosopher. He calls himself sort of an archaeologist of human anthropology or history or culture, right? And he wrote a series of books back in the 70s and 80s. He did a study of madhouses and prisons in France. He's French. He did a study of society that he called Discipline and Publish, and he planned a 3-volume history of sex that I think he didn't finish, but. Just to give you an example, in his book, Discipline and Punish, his basic idea in layman's terms is that whatever the status quo is that you're born into is a system that is dominated by people who are in power, who convince you to enact a social role that if you enact the social role that's assigned to you, you will be rewarded. That's right. And if you refuse to, you'll be punished. So in the Age of Enlightenment, we decided that people that didn't fit into society were insane, and so we invented the insane asylum to put those square pegs that won't fit in the round holes.
Yeah.
Society tells you what the round hole is, and you're supposed to conform to it. That's discipline. If you follow that discipline, if you do whatever society says you're supposed to do as a straight, white, heterosexual male, society will give you merit badges. It will let you be on the football team, and you get to date the pretty girls, right? And if you refuse to do that, then culture will punish you for it. Okay? So you following me?
Yeah.
Now, he said all of these social roles that we're forced to play are completely artificial, they're arbitrary, and they're only enacted by people so that they can hang on to their own power. And every relationship we have is a power relationship. So, and I'm way simplifying this, okay?
I don't think you are.
So the only way to be free and independent is to rebel against everything that society says you're supposed to be. Okay? So if it says boys are supposed to play with G.I. Joes and trucks, then dress boys up in girls' clothes, put makeup on them, and give them Barbie dolls and train them up to be the opposite so that they can actually live freely from the constraints of the changed society.
Right.
Okay. So that's where the idea of sort of gender and identity being plastic and being subjective, not essential. You're not born with it. It's something that society teaches you to do.
Okay.
Right? So, like, some people are watching this and they're like, yeah, he's totally mansplaining all this to us because society has said he'll be rewarded if he acts like a guy who knows what he's talking about and can tell us what we're doing. I get that, right? But there are some inherent contradictions in this whole view, right? For instance, if gender is plastic, right?
Yeah.
My choice. I can do what I want. Then how come race isn't? You know, there's this woman up in Washington who is white, but she self-identifies as black, and I'm like, wait a minute, you're trying to tell me that this truth is not essential. Michel Foucault is anti-essentialist. That this truth is not essential, but then you're saying this one is. That seems totally arbitrary to me.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm saying.
Why can't I be a dog if I want to be?
I think you can.
Why can't I be 80 years old if I want to?
I think you can.
Okay.
So yeah, and look, I appreciate Michel Foucault, but I'm telling you, Foucault is spelled Foucault, I think. It might be two C's, but you don't pronounce the T because it's French. Much to his
French
credit,
it up, man.
Much to his credit, he favored, BDSM, anonymous gay sex in bathhouses in California, and he died of AIDS because he was practicing what he preached, during the time that he was preaching it. But he also advocated, for instance, for the abandonment of sex consent laws between adults and children in France, because to him that was an artificial construct that society just does that, and it shouldn't be done. So a lot of people are enamored of Michel Foucault, but if you don't drill down into what what he was arguing, I don't think you're considering the full consequences. And this is what I always tell my philosophy students. Ideas have consequences. And before you commit to believing something, you've got to draw an idea all the way to its conclusion.
Right.
And ask yourself, do I believe that? Because if you don't believe that, if that seems outrageous, like that you'd be advocating for men to be able to have sex with a child, well then whatever's being argued here, that might be crazy too. There's a principle, universalize your maxims, stretch them all the way out. Another example I could give you that's not related to this is that back in the 1980s, I was listening to a guy from South Africa talk about how in the future women would be able to freeze their embryos and pre-select the traits they wanted for their children.
Right.
Blue eyes, IQ above this, and we're getting close to that at this point.
Sure.
But while I'm listening to this guy enthusiastically tell me that there will be a day when we'll be able to do this, in my head I'm saying to myself, I've heard this before. Where have I heard this before? Oh, it's the Nazis.
Yeah.
They said the same thing. They just didn't have the technology to be able to. So we like to do these things are atrocities, but as long as they happen in a petri dish, we get to pretend that they're not.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
If we can do them all antiseptically and clean, we get to pretend that we're not Joseph Mengele sewing twins together.
It's not the idea. Okay, so basically, it's not the idea that's wrong. It's only where it took it.
Well,
so I'm saying this is what they're saying.
Maybe the idea is actually wrong, and it just looks not wrong here.
That's what I'm saying. Is the idea is I'm saying they're perceiving it as they're saying the idea is not the bad thing.
Right.
It's just where it took it here.
Right.
If we can take that same idea without it going there, then it's not that bad. But inevitably it will go there.
Exactly, because then the philosophical question comes, all right, then upon what grounds do you draw the line
of where
that this is not okay, but this is? Where's the firm philosophical grounds for that line? And I used to have a professor that would say, it's awfully quaint that we say that we're going to. Well, okay, so generally speaking, I know the country's pretty polarized, but a lot of people are pro-choice, right? And a lot of people are anti-abortion. And then you ask them about euthanasia, right? You ask them about what the philosophical grounds are for these things, right?
Yeah.
And they say, well, I'm not going to let him kill my grandfather. I'm like, well, wait a minute. What's the philosophical grounds? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so what you end up with is this, they call it the slippery slope. You end up with this, because right now there are bioethicists whose foundation for everything, and this is enshrined in the Constitution, the the Declaration on the Rights of Man and Citizen in France.
Right.
There's a line in that document that says that the only way that people can be deprived of their right, or the only way that they can be valued in society, the only grounds for anybody's place in society is based upon their utility. Utility. Oh, their usefulness to society determines their place in society, not their birth, not their... And so you read that line and you're like, wait a minute, that's very different than the Declaration of Independence. A declaration doesn't say that you're valued according to your utility to the state.
Right.
The Declaration on the Rights of Man and Citizen includes not only what the state's responsibilities are to the citizen, but what the citizen's responsibilities are to the state. And that's also something that is absent from the Declaration of Independence. So you see this difference. Well, that utility, the idea of the usefulness of the state, becomes a bioethical foundation for making an evaluation of whether we're going to save this person or that person.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you guys know, you're in a medical situation, emergency room. 2 different cases come in. You have to triage those. You choose the one that is more emergency. Do you see what I mean?
Oh yeah, I know. We had to make these decisions
all the time
in other countries. Yeah,
and
it sucks, but you got to on who. Okay.
And so they have socialized medicine in Canada, and I made a joke because my brother-in-law is Canadian. And I said, "Oh, well, I guess if you break your ankle, you're just SOL." He said, "No, if you break your ankle, you go straight to the front of the line. It's if you got cancer, you're SOL." Because when they triage you on cancer, they take into account how old you are and how useful you are to Canadian. Is the cost that I'm going to spend as the state to save you? They do a cost-benefit analysis. They do a cost-benefit analysis. And when you say that, you know, the Democrats were really smart when we were arguing about Obamacare. They're like, no, there aren't going to be any death panels. But a cost-benefit analysis is a death panel. It's not helpful to call it a death panel.
Yeah.
But it is a decision about the allocation of resources, which you guys who are in the military know.
Yeah.
It has to be done, practically speaking, all the time.
Sure.
And so we need to have very firm foundations for how we're going to make those decisions.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry, I don't know how we got there. But.
I don't even know where. Okay. Yeah. How did we get there? I got to go back and look at the we were. Okay. So. But yeah, originally what we were talking about was just, you know, the differences in the polarization, and then ultimately where the parties were and how the Democratic Party was going to basically face Trump, you know, in the re-election, and if they had any, in how it was going to work. Because right now I haven't seen, you know, but quite frankly, anyone. Much less a rising star or somebody that can...
Right. That's why I would keep my eye on Cory Booker. I'd keep my eye on... I think it's too early for Cortez. Yeah. She's too young and too raw. She might not even get elected. Who knows?
Yeah.
But Cory Booker might be your next Barack Obama.
Yeah.
But yeah, look at who they have to choose from. If you've got Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders... Elizabeth Warren, I think you should take seriously.
Yeah.
And I think she's the most likely because I think Biden is too old, and I honestly think Bernie Sanders is too old too. But who knows?
Well, I mean, I think the Democratic.
I don't
Party,
mean disqualifyingly so.
Yeah.
I just mean as a candidate, we're
going to change topics now because we probably, let's see, what are we looking at? We got about another hour left max. Going back over to some lighter things. Last time, after we talked about your book, we talked about movies.
Yeah.
Did you get a chance to check either one of the movies out?
I didn't. I'm sorry.
Man, you're killing me. You guys are killing me. Okay, well,
but I did watch Capricorn 1 again.
Oh, Sasha hates you. She hates me every time. I made her watch that movie, and I admit it was bad, but it was good in a weird way. Yeah. It was good because of the concept behind it. But anyway, you've got to watch it. We're just gonna have to wait again. So I've got the movie.
You're talking about Eyes Wide Shut. You need to hand it to me.
Yeah, in the fourth kind. I actually watched the fourth because we were talking about.
Yeah.
You guys don't remember, if you guys weren't here last time, we were talking about creepiest movies, and I told them that the creepiest movie I had ever seen, in my opinion, was The Fourth Kind. And then we also talked about some other movies and some stuff, and ended up talking about the movie Eyes Wide Shut, which was a box office flop, but
by a great
fodder of conspiracy theories.
Great director.
It is, great director. Last movie he made, and just absolute fuel for conspiracy stuff all day long, and stuff that's pretty cool. So check that out, and we'll get to that next time. And on the last note, though, we do want to revisit. So you have a November 15th date for your book.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning again. It is called The Incorruptibles, a novel.
Give us a pretend like we didn't talk about last time, and give everyone, the listeners, a quick overview of the storyline and what we're talking about.
The storyline alternates between 1945 and 2013.
You might have to say we got a lot of gym noise going on.
Yeah.
Oh, we're good? Okay. All right, cool.
Main character is a professor, not unlike myself. You know, he's a lit guy at Yale University, and he's just found out that he's gotten tenure, which is a big achievement in the academic.
And that basically for tenure, what does that mean for listeners that don't know?
Well, tenure means that you've achieved a certain rank. The lowest tenure professor in any university is an associate professor. So I'm an associate professor, and I have tenure.
Okay.
But it basically means you can't get fired.
Okay.
And what it does for the intellectual is it frees us up to feel like we're free to do now what we want to
teach.
Not just teach, but the kind of writing we want to do, the kind of research. You know, when you're going up for tenure, you feel the pressure that, hey, you need to be doing this kind of stuff, this kind of stuff, this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
In the military, there's got to be a rank. It might be the top rank, but there's got to be a level of rank that you get to where it's like, okay, now I'm at this level.
Yeah,
you see what I'm saying?
On the enlisted side, at least in the Marine Corps, when you reach the rank of staff sergeant, it becomes.
Yeah.
I mean, you can be stuck there, and you can be forced.
But it's a career.
But you're going to be a
Right.
career, and then obviously the officers have something similar to that. I forget the terminology, but it's when they become an actual active duty officer. They start as reserve officers, even though they're active duty, and then once I forget what the term is. Once they reach captain or major, then they become basically tenured.
So this guy and his wife Cecilia is
screw that up, guys. Open
is the
it.
head administrative nurse at a hospital that's attached to Yale University. They have 3 kids. They're pretty normal people, and he's invited to a party. His wife can't go, and it's an eyes wide shut party.
Oh wow!
But he doesn't know that, so he goes. He brings a bottle of wine. They have dinner. He runs into one of his colleagues, who's a medievalist, who everybody thinks is crazy. And he doesn't get to talk to him very long. But then as the night wears on, he starts realizing that people are smoking a little bit of weed, which, it's fine.
Yeah.
But then the lights have been dimmed, and people are starting to maybe touch him a little bit, and it's making him uncomfortable. And then he realizes that
things are starting to get freaky.
Right. And something ritual is going on in the living room. He's out on the patio.
Yeah.
And he becomes alarmed when he realizes that one of the people that he's looking at is the guy that invited him to the party, and he's got a cape on and this sort of New Orleans style bird mask, but he's not wearing any clothes underneath
that would complicate things.
And so at that moment, the guy that he'd run into earlier grabs his shoulder and says, "Follow me," and he takes him out a back gate, gets him to the street, and says, "We'll talk. Just go home," right? And so Ambrose goes home, doesn't tell his wife really what happened because he's not really sure himself. And then the next day when he goes back to campus, the guy that grabbed him and kind of...
I wouldn't tell my wife where I'd been. I promise you.
She asks him, but he says, "Let me tell you later."
Just kidding. I wouldn't go to a party like that. But I'm just saying. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But she's not suspicious or anything. He just says, "I'm not sure what I saw. So I'm going to talk to John Corwin tomorrow, and I'll let you know." Well, then John Corwin disappears and is gone for a month, and nobody knows where he. And he asks his dean, "Where is he?" In the meantime, he starts to become suspicious. The guy that invited him to a party has founded a new interdisciplinary institute. When he looks at, and he's asked to join it, and there are 2 sides to it. There's a science side and there's a humanities side, and it's like an honors college within an honors college for really bright graduate students and undergraduates. And they're doing genetics work on this side. They're doing all this stuff, and then over here they're doing a bunch of crazy, Michel Foucault theoretical stuff. And then John Corwin, the guy that disappeared, pops back up, and he thinks that he's discovered what this guy is really up to.
Right.
The other storyline starts in 1945 with a young man named Enzo Shlomo, who's a convert to Catholicism, and he's racing to the cathedral in Naples to try to save the miraculous blood of a saint named Saint Januarius, whose blood liquefies every 3 years. Ultimately, that miraculous blood gets into the hands of the Nazis. That blood is delivered to Joseph Mengele, the angel of death at Auschwitz, as he is escaping Europe for Argentina.
Right.
So the 2 storylines that I go pivot back and forth between are you're following my character try to figure out what this evil guy's doing in the present, but there's a storyline where you're following Joseph Mengele from Germany to Bavaria to Genoa to Mar del Plata, Argentina, to new identity after new identity, and he wants to continue his work that he was working on for Hitler. And then we talked about conspiracy theories, right? The conceit of my book is that U-boat 977 did not surrender in 1945 to the Allies. It snorkeled all the way to Argentina. And every conspiracy theory guy wants Hitler to be on that U-boat. They believe, that he didn't die, he went to Argentina, and and in my book, it's not Hitler on that U-boat, it's Joseph Mengele. But the problem that Joseph Mengele has is, one, World War II technology could not achieve what he was trying to achieve. But technology today would. In fact, in the news...
So it's picked up where...
So it picks up where my villain, Andre Lupe, has figured out what Mengele was trying to do, and he gets his hand on the miraculous blood. And my characters slowly are finding out that the institutes are not what they purport to be, that he's doing cloning and other stem cell research. They don't understand what materials he's dealing with, so they end up following him back to Naples.
Yeah.
And so it's fun, but obviously it's not just one book, and that's what our viewers should know. When I got a publishing deal for this book, I asked them, "Do you guys mind if this is a trilogy?" And they said, "No, we're happy. Trilogies are better than single books, so thumbs up to you." So this book takes us through, the final moment when they realize, oh my gosh, this is what Mengele was trying to do. This is what this guy's trying to do, and the book, ends with you wanting to find out, well, what the hell's going to happen next? So the sequel will be called The Resurrectionists, to give you a hint about what he's doing. And the last one is called The Apocalyptics.
Which obviously is going to take us all the way into legends and predictions and theories about the apocalypse.
And like I said last time, my daughter read enough of it to where she put it down at one point and said, "Dad, this is not one book, this is like 3. And I had gotten about 2/3 of the way through it, and I realized, I don't know what kind of book that, I have to decide where is this going. Is it going this way? Is it going this way, or is it some combination of the both? And I think I've decided it's a combination of both. So it's got, if you like supernatural thrillers, there's some spiritual warfare that goes on with the family, which is why I went back and reread The Exorcist. There are some obscene objects from I'm thinking about the 12th, 13th, or 14th century that are found in the Reagan's household. Their name's Reagan. That cause some supernatural things to be happening to them. Some very strange, scary things. And so there's going to be there's a direct tie, and it's personal, between the Ambrose's family,
right,
and the connection to Mengele, and the connection to this whole diabolical scheme,
right.
This conspiracy that's going on. But ultimately, I think the book will be different than people think or might imagine, because I've done some things in it where, how do I describe it without giving it away? Well, that conversation that you overhear at the beginning of the novel where one character is telling the other. So the Germans, they got the blood of the saint. It's miraculously liquefied. But they put the ampule back, and she says they put it back on the altar. What for? Why would they take it from this guy and kill this guy, but then put it right back on the altar in the Duomo? He says, well, they cracked it first. They took some of the blood, but then they put the rest of it back, so that the church would think that it was damaged because of the war. He says, I think they secreted the blood back to Germany.
Right. And
she says, what for? And he says, what do you think? And she says, to prove that miracles don't happen? And he said, no, to prove that they do.
Nice.
So, and I'm not saying that the Nazis were trying to prove that miracles do happen. What I'm saying is that the Nazis, look, if you're going to go to war with God, you have to believe in God. So it's not a non-believer that's doing this stuff. It's actually somebody who is more than a true believer.
And Hitler was a believer.
No, absolutely.
Absolutely, he was a believer in everything.
So that's kind of part of my conceit, because I think in the world that we live in, if you're academic, if you're intelligent, if you belong to that elite class,
Yeah.
right? It's not normal for people to be believers in any sort of traditional religion. They believe a lot of things, but generally speaking, they're not traditionalists. And so I wanted to do something with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
With that whole idea. And so I hope I'm successful. But so far, like I said, people who've read their manuscript. I got a publishing deal. That must mean it's worth something. They risked. I don't know. You know.
I'm definitely gonna read it.
So yeah, November 15th, Isabella Media. I think initially you'll see it on Amazon, Kindle, ebook, and those electronic platforms first, and then it'll roll out in physical form at your Barnes and Nobles. And obviously we'll be doing this again, so I'll be able to tell you, because I asked them, what am I going to be doing during this? And they said, you're going to be doing a lot of interviews, and you might be doing like book signings and book talks, but I don't know how all that's going to work. So it'll depend on whether it blows up or not. Cross your fingers, hope it blows up.
Awesome, man. Well, cool, dude. It has been an awesome time. Really appreciate you coming on. Look forward to us doing this again probably in a couple weeks. Guys, the book's name is The Incorruptibles. Like he said, November 15th. It's going to be out on your ebook formats. Look for it on Amazon, and then also look for it at your major retailers, Barnes & Nobles, Walmart, et cetera, et cetera. Greg, thanks for coming again, man. I can't wait to read this book.
Appreciate it.
We are looking at probably, right now we're working a deal. The next show might be on the 28th. We might be doing an event at an outside venue on Saturday, the 27th, for the Run for Robin. It's not for sure yet, but we're trying to make that happen. Probably gonna have some musical guests coming on for that one if that goes the way we look forward to it. So you're obviously welcome to come back for that too. And everyone that's here watching this both live and in replay, we appreciate you guys coming out for Crosswit, and we will see you all next time. Later.
Good night.